Hello everybody, welcome into our latest live broadcast. It is Sunday the 12th of January 2025. I'm CareyHolzman. Welcome back in. Find a seat, make yourself comfortable. Plenty of room for everybody in here. Jump on in, hop on in. The show's about to start. We usually spend the first few minutes of the show with social niceties such as, how are you? And have you had a good weekend? Are you ready for Monday? How about this weather we're having? I always like to do more or less, if you're new here, a little bit of a monologue, tell you what's going on behind the scenes a little bit. We do keep a lot of behind the scenes information over to the members only videos that we do every single Monday at this time, 1 o'clock Phoenix time. It's our traditional start time. And for the members that support us, they keep us free of corporate, puppetry. We don't want to be beholden to any corporation to control what we say or what we do, or how we do it, or when we do it. And it's through the support of our members, through Super Chats, PayPal contributions, and Amazon gift cards that we're able to continue bringing you almost daily brand new content, upwards of 3 hours a day. That's a lot of content. And I don't expect everybody to watch it all, but we try to get a variety that hopefully we're not alienating anybody's interests, that we can cover everything from networking, mini PCs, PC building, PC repair, PC diagnosis, PC upgrades, laptop repairs and upgrades. To a certain extent, I'm a little limited with what I can do with laptops, but basic upgrades and reinstalls and driver issues, blue screen crashes, all that kind of stuff we can work on. Anything that requires a soldering iron, count me out. I've got way too much work piled up to focus that much time on something that would essentially not be very interactive, because I'd have to have my head down the whole time to get it done. Versus these kind of videos, well, I get to hang out and enjoy your company, while at the same time, think about it as like sipping a cup of coffee with friends. I'm not there to chug the coffee down as quickly as I can, and I'm sure there are other videos here on YouTube if that's what you're into. But we're here to hang out together, and we would love very much if you're watching this video live, or any video of mine that is live, join us in our chat room. It is free, and the only requirement that we have is that you are kind. That's it. That's all it takes. Pop on in, say hello, and just watch what happens. You do not have to be particularly socially adept. Just come in and say hello. In fact, if you don't say hello, I don't even know that you're watching. So as far as I can tell, you are not even there. So what ends up happening is, as you say hello, you'll start to recognize names, and other names in the chat, they'll recognize you. Friendships will form, and this becomes much, much more than how to replace a laptop battery. And I hope you take advantage of it, because we are, as far as I know, the largest community on YouTube that is friendly. I don't think you'll find a friendlier, more welcoming community. And you're welcome to be a part of it if you're friendly and welcoming too. We'd love to have you here. Now, yesterday I didn't get a lot of work done, right? I was sipping my coffee and the coffee being the laptop here. This is a fairly complex battery changeout for a Dell 17R, what's it called, an R3. This laptop's about 10 years old, but it was also over $3,000 10 years ago, which is even more by today's value of the dollar. And when you spend that kind of money on a machine, you can expect it to last longer. And if it means, putting more RAM, or even if it's just upgrading it, it makes sense if the machine is still of really good caliber today. But if you're buying a discounted machine 10 years ago, something to just get you by, putting any kind of time or money into it isn't increasing its value or its much usability. You're just slightly prolonging the inevitable. So I recommend that if you have a machine that's over $1,000 in value, you probably have a machine that'll last you 10 years. But if you bought a machine that's under 1,000, and the further under 1,000 you go, well, the more limited life expectancy. And when I say life expectancy, I'm not just referring to the machine turning on. I'm also referring to the machine getting slower and slower as you add more and more software from Windows updates and antivirus that takes more system resources away from you, so it can process all of the ever-growing thousands of threats that are introduced to the internet every single minute of every single day. There are now over 1,000 threats new released on the internet every single second. The internet's getting bigger. New populations are coming online that have never been online before. Places like Nigeria that are very, very crowded. Now, no matter what society you live in, there is a certain percentage of that society that are going to be criminals. They're going to look for an easy way to generate money by stealing it from you. And because they're in another country, it's very hard to enforce our country's laws or your country's laws from somebody in another country. Therefore, there's very little punishment for it in general in these countries. So it's really just a moral or ethical situation, which if you've got nothing to lose, if you're in a very poor place with nothing, then there's really no risk. But if you have something that you want to protect from theft, from complete strangers who you've never wronged on the internet, living in other countries anywhere in the world, as more and more places get online and get high-speed internet access available to them, then much like insurance, you need to protect what you have. If you have a piece of crap car that's worth $500, you might feel like, I am not pulling, full comprehensive coverage on this piece of crap car because the insurance is $3,000 a year on a $500 car. Doesn't make any sense. But if you've accumulated some assets, you need to know, if you don't already, other people will want to steal those from you if they're aware you have them. So the best way to do that, to protect your assets, is to make sure you invest in both insurance and security. By holding on to an old computer, and when I say old, I'm talking 10 plus years old, and refusing to let it go, I hope you don't have anything of any value you're worried about anybody taking, including your identity. Because that little cost of replacing a computer is less than 2% of the cost of going to the courts, hiring a lawyer, all the effort that's required to prove you are now who you say you are versus the other person who says they're you. And it goes through the court systems, and you have to have an attorney, and it's going to take at least 2 years and thousands of dollars. Suddenly, replacing your computer doesn't seem that expensive anymore. Now, this doesn't guarantee that your identity won't be stolen, but it certainly puts the odds in your favor in as much as insurance doesn't guarantee you're not going to get into a car accident, but it does limit your liabilities. And in that way, when you're making wise decisions behind the internet by not clicking on links in email or attachments you're not familiar with, having good antivirus, or I use Malwarebytes, the paid version of Malwarebytes, along with Windows security. That's it. That's all I use. That's all I use for my customers. It's not expensive. In fact, you can pick up Malwarebytes for as little as $4 a license when it goes on sale. That's it. You don't need VPN. The VPN we talked a little bit about yesterday, just a complete waste of money for consumers. For businesses, when you're protecting other people's data that you can be held accountable for if it gets stolen on your watch, VPNs are absolutely non-negotiable. But for consumers, they're just a waste of money. Obviously, you've decided for yourself if you're going to debate that with me. I'm not here to change your mind. It doesn't make me any richer or any poorer. It's just making you poor paying for a service that you're using that's slowing your internet down. Even if you're getting it for free, it's slowing your internet down, and it's giving you security theater. It's not actually doing anything for security for you. Generally speaking, there are some exceptions, but as somebody watching a YouTube video, more than likely you have no need for a VPN that isn't, let's just say, sketchy, and leave it at that. Now, to get back to where we were yesterday, we've removed the NVMe drive out of this Alienware and this 2.5-inch mechanical drive, which is both from 2015. They're both storage drives. Now, this laptop has 2 NVMe slots. We are not going to plug this drive back in. All the data has been copied off of it onto Mara's new ProArt Z890 build that we did a couple weeks ago. This unit here, again, she's copied any data off of it. We're going to replace this, as well as fill in the blank slot here, with a Samsung 970 EVO Gen 3, 2 terabytes. So she'll have a total of 4 terabytes. This is 1 terabyte, and this is 1 terabyte. But this is snail slow, very unreliable, loud and clunky, uses a lot of power, and it adds some weight to an already heavy laptop. This is You know, if this was 5 terabytes or bigger, I could understand. But anything under 4 terabytes, it just doesn't make any sense to have mechanical drives anymore. SSDs have become so inexpensive. I mean, do what you want, don't get me wrong. It's your mess to clean up. For me personally, when I have to warranty and service my clients for the lifetime of the computer, I want to make sure that the clients don't need to call me unless the client did something. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I want my clients to be happy and know they bought something good. And if I wouldn't do that for my clients, if I wouldn't put one of these in my client's computer, I'm not going to tell you any differently. But what you want to do at the end of the day is entirely up to you. So let's be clear on that. I'm sharing advice from 34 years of experience in this industry, and you may choose to dismiss it or embrace it. Take what you want, leave the rest. What doesn't apply to you will apply to somebody else, and we'll show each other a little courtesy and respect in regards to us being grown adults who can make our own decisions, provided we have all available information. Now, let me say hello to everybody joining us, because I have been remiss in not doing that right now. So looking into our chat room, we have Mark Baggett, Eddie Casanova, and Andy Lars saying hello. There's Andy Kane and Luke Greenia joining us. There's Doman 2000, Viable Solutions. Scott, all say hello. There is, of course, Mara hanging out in the chat room, our channel administrator. We also have our friend Mark Gaines and Jose Lopez joining us. Luke Chaffrey, not to be confused with Nick Caffrey. Luke Chaffrey. Welcome in, Luke. We've got Patrick T. and Craig Dollar saying hello. There's also Philip Jones saying hello. Welcome in, Philip. Darren Gilholm, Rockman Gibson, and Easy Otter joining us, along with David Graham and Juan Baltazar. Roteva 2 saying hello from Missouri. Mecca Cameron joins us today in our chat room. And let's see, Garfield Rupe, Eugene Ildago, Bajing Guy says hello. There's Rick Lakes all the way from Minnesota joining us. Big Easy says a good evening. Charlie Purdy, there's our friend Charlie jumping in the chat saying hello. Richard DeFries says hello. And there's Nick Caffrey, speak of the devil. Welcome in, Nick. Patrick Manny, Mikhail, Glenn, Jason H88, Pixelbyte, Copernic Ox, DeWald DeBise, Terry, Stan Ristoff. All right, we got a nice, I wouldn't say a full house, but we definitely have a great turnout here for a Sunday afternoon. I've been surprised the last couple Sundays, regular content creators that I watch have not been broadcasting. So, hey, if they're not going to do it, I will. If you know anything about me, I don't like doing what other people are doing. So if people are not broadcasting on Sundays, guess what day I want to broadcast on? If everybody's going that way, guess which way I want to go? I'll give you a hint. Okay. So as I mentioned, we didn't get that far yesterday because this is a pretty complex battery upgrade. It's something that is not normal with regards to battery replacements. In fact, for comparison, on Tuesday, I think we're going to have a Dell XPS 13. That's a little bit younger than this. This is about 10 years old. I think the XPS 13 is about 7 years old. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to replace the battery on the Dell XPS 13. Now, normally, I would recommend you open any laptop you've got, look at what model number of battery you have, rather than just Google it, because sometimes the manufacturers change the models and the connectors with what we call revisions. And that is sometimes it's not something you notice unless somebody points it out to you. Like when you're on a support page for a motherboard looking for a BIOS, it'll often say in finer print, do you have a revision 1 of this motherboard, revision 2? And then there's a little note on how to determine that. It's basically you're looking for a sticker or something. So if you open your laptop up and just take a look at the battery, you can be assured that you're getting the right battery that you're ordering online. Now that I've said that, this battery for this unit was ordered while we were on vacation because I figured I'll risk it. I'm ordering from Amazon. I have 30-day returns. I'm not going to be that upset if it doesn't get done and I, have to send the battery back for a different one. The Dell XPS we ordered directly from Dell. I had the customer order it while we were again on vacation. I said, why don't you order the battery? It's going to take about a week to 10 days to arrive. That's about the time we'll be back from vacation. You call me when it arrives. And customer called me. He said he just received it, so I'll pick it up probably tomorrow night. And then I'll have that video for you on Tuesday. And then you can compare the difference. I think you'll find the Dell XPS 13 is much easier than what we're showing here with this Alienware, also made by Dell. This Alienware is much more complex, but this is also true in general of gaming laptop computers. They're much more complex. They're also generally more expensive, heavier, and don't have anywhere near the battery life. So a Dell XPS battery life is probably 6 hours, maybe 8. A battery life in something like this at best is maybe 3. That would be my guess. So, you've got a lot of power consumption here with a 17-inch screen that's also very, very power hungry. Along with the GPU that's in this machine, you've got a lot of very power hungry things that get hot. We're going to inspect the fan heat sinks and look for anything that might be plugging the heat sinks or blocking the airflow. And that's usually what causes most overheating issues on laptops. Thermal paste replacement, as we mentioned yesterday, is generally, once again, it's a theater of cooling. It's this idea and this concept that does not equate to any actual meaningful results in reality. In my experience, it's a waste of time and money. If you're taking the heatsink off anyway and you're going to be in there, I suppose, but really you're still wasting your time and money. I don't see any reason you need to take the heatsink off unless it requires, like, let's say you're trying to fix something, and in order to fix that, the heatsink's in the way and it's got to come off. I would not intentionally break the seal on a heatsink. I don't care how old the thermal compound is, you're breaking the seal on it. And once you do that, it's likely going to make very little difference between what the factory did and what you did. Now, if you're a very technical person and you can get into the weeds with stuff like this and you're very comfortable with it and you have all the tools and patience and experience, I'm not telling you not to do it. If you're somebody who's watching YouTube videos who doesn't have any experience with this, I would say leave it alone and only fix what's broken. If your system is overheating or the fans are getting loud, in most cases, like 99.9% of the cases, something's blocking your airflow. The heat sinks are plugged, or there's something jammed between the edge of the fan and where the fan is blowing air out. It could be lint, pet hair. It builds up over time. You can see that demonstrated time and time again on most laptop repair videos, which ironically, they'll change the thermal compound out, right? They'll clear out the heat sinks. They'll explain, look how dirty these heat sinks are. And the next thing they usually do is they say, well, let's change the thermal compound, or let's put some thermal pads on this. We'll clean it all. They spend all this time. And then they put it all back together and they prove to you, look how much cooler it's running. But it would have run that cool if they would have left the thermal compound alone and didn't replace any thermal pads. If all they did was clear the heat sinks and the blockages from the fans, it would have run exactly the same within a degree or two. So if it's worth it to you to get that extra 1 or 2 degrees of cooling, well, that's up to you. I don't think it's worth it. I think there's too much risk. It's too much of a hassle. But some of you might find it fun and have money burning a hole in your pockets. As a technician, I would advise you as my customer to not do that. All right? As a professional working technician, my advice to my customer is don't do that. As a hobbyist, hey man, why don't you hook that thing up to 120 volts and boost your horsepower and, I don't know, get a Sawzall and put a little case window in here while you're at it. It's ridiculous, it's impractical, but you might find it fun. I enjoy what I do. I do find what I do fun, but I also take it very seriously. You can have serious fun, by the way. You don't have to have irresponsible fun. So I'm just trying to keep it practical, keep your expectations grounded, and also try and save you some money for the things that really matter. At least from my perspective, being in this business 34 years. I'm not anti-thermal compound. I'm just anti-nonsense. I'm anti-witchcraft. I'm anti-ritualizing repairs. If you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, but you're rather just following a dance routine in order to get to a certain result, and you don't understand what role each thing plays in the process, you should not be doing it. Or if you are going to do it anyway, go get yourself a donated computer somewhere from Goodwill or something. Let that be the cadaver you practice your autopsies on, rather than a living thing. That's what I'm saying. Because if your life is going to be stressed out because you've damaged the one thing that connects you to the world, that entertains you, it keeps you educated and connected, and you did it for no reason than being inspired by a YouTube video that convinced you to fix something that was never broken to begin with, you're not going to be in a good place up here. If this is not a toy, this is a tool that is going to make you very distressed, I suggest you treat it with respect, do what needs to be done, and nothing more than that. If it's not good enough for you and you're trying to make it better, and in the time and money you spent to make it better, it no longer works, and now you're back in that mental place where now you don't have the money to fix it because you just spent money you didn't need to spend to do an upgrade you didn't need to do, I just want you to think carefully about what it's going to cost you and what your risks are, and I don't care how easy anybody thinks it is. People make mistakes all the time. Clips get broken, screws get lost, and you can't remember how certain things go back, or it just doesn't seem to want to go back right. And you don't have the experience, let's just say, and you got in over your head and you're in the weeds and now you're freaked out. Probably best to avoid that unless it's absolutely worth that risk. As a computer technician, I am giving you this advice because I want you to have a happy experience with your computer. I don't want you to waste your money. And I also want you to be stress-free as much as possible, because we have enough stress in the world without introducing more stress voluntarily upon ourselves. So, but that's just the way I approach my business, right? I don't suggest my customers buy computers that are much more powerful than they need. I also don't suggest they buy computers that are just going to get them by for the next few months. We find that middle ground of budget, reliability, longevity, performance, and that's where we're always aiming, right in the middle, not to the extreme one way, not to the extreme the other way. If we have to, then we will, but there's got to be a reason for me to potentially tarnish my reputation to that customer by engaging in that kind of thought pattern. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Again, it's just information. What you do with that is up to you. Now, oh, there's PSC Computers Missouri joining us and says hello. Cal of C says hello. James Goodrum joining us. And Jose Lopez, Joe Justice, and Romax Sar are all jumping in the chat here saying hello. Welcome in. Welcome back. John Svensson. Welcome back, everyone. Scott Leo says, there's a name from a while ago. I don't know where that came up. Frank Jimmy says hello. Justin Karn says hello from Santan Valley, Arizona. Oh, we got a local. Look at that. Oh, I see. Douglas Manor said, I stumbled upon your channel. You remind me of Leo Laporte. Well, Leo and I have been in the industry a long time, where Leo is more in the media and I'm a working computer technician. I think Leo's a much better presenter than I am. He's very, very well polished at speaking on camera and radio. We've both been in the industry a long time, just on different sides of it, with a little crossover, right? So Leo may give advice on how to fix a computer, even though he's never really done that for money. So he doesn't have like the industry experience, but he's got media experience and he's very well polished on camera and on his podcast. So nothing but respect for that man. Whereas I'm a computer technician who overlaps into media. So I'm nowhere near as polished as Leo is. But we've been doing this basically for, well, Leo's been doing it longer than I have, right? Because Leo, back in Tech TV days, I was still working as a tech. I hadn't dipped my toes in media until the early 2000s. Yeah, well, 2003, 2004. So Leo already had probably 10 years on me at that point. And I'm still not as good as he is on camera. Yeah. Now that man is smooth. All right. But I'll take that as a compliment. I remind you, Leo. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to take a quick look in the chat room here. Maria Brazzo says hello. Iceman says hello. And Bernard C. joining us from Nevada. Dave in St. Louis joining us. Welcome in, Dave in St. Louis. And Justin Carnes. Oh, Justin is in Santan Valley. I see. Bernard says, he's asking the chat room, he upgraded an Acer 5740. He had bought a Windows 10 product key. From Carey, Microsoft says it's an invalid key. I know Carey's key is good to the point of wiping everything and reinstall home. Well, if you bought a Windows, let's talk about this for a minute. There's a lot of YouTube channels that are promoting Windows and Microsoft Office product keys, but some of the sites they're pointing to are, in my professional opinion, sketchy. And I really wanted to be able to offer my audience discounted keys, but I needed personally to verify these keys were both legal and from a legitimate company that had support that would stand behind anybody who had any problems. What I found with other content creators when I asked them, I have a problem with my key, what do you advise? And they said, not my problem. That's between you and them. Okay, but you promoted it. Yeah, but I didn't put a gun to your head and make you buy it. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. So you don't take any responsibility for anything. I can't run a business that way. Besides, I need some discounted keys because I found out the legitimate keys I was buying from somebody who only sold to system manufacturers was selling me fraudulent keys. And I gave them the benefit of the doubt. But by the third time in a row that it happened, and the excuses were starting to get a little weak about how this happens, I realized I was being taken to the cleaners. So I decided, and I was forced more or less, to go out and do the research and try and find different places where I could buy product keys that were real and were also a savings. And what I found was VIP CDK deals, which is also SCD keys. And I put them through the ringer. I had their keys tested. I had their support tested. I bought keys and waited 2 months before I used them. And when I had a key, and it's happened, that didn't work, like what Bernard is saying, I reached out to their support and they resolved the issue for me. If you reach out to their support and they do not find a resolution for you in a timely manner, then please email me here. Unlike any other content creator, if I'm endorsing anything like Acronis, for example, RoboForm, the password manager, Instant House Call, the remote software I use, or SCD keys, I'm not only making sure my audience gets an exclusive discount, I'm also standing behind it. So if you have any problems with any of the vendors, you should first reach out to them and make them aware. They can't read your mind. Make them aware you're having a problem. Let them go through their support script, if you will, to ensure that you're not making a mistake. If you're trying to put Windows 10 Home product key, Windows 10 Home, onto a Windows 10 Pro install, it's not going to work. It's going to tell you the key's not valid for that version of Windows, and vice versa. So there are a few things such as that are quite basic that you'd be surprised how many people overlook these very simple items, and the problem's resolved, and you find out it was really the customer's misunderstanding the whole time. Other times, there is a misunderstanding on behalf of the key seller, in this case SCD Keys, or it could be Acronis or RoboForm, and this very rarely happens, but it can. And when it does, your first step is let them know, give them the opportunity to fix it. If the issue remains, then reach out to me personally, because the buck stops with me, and we'll get you sorted. And you find me another YouTube content creator that does that. They might do that for their own merch. I do this for any company I endorse here. I stand behind it. The same way I have to in real life. If you were to buy something from me as my customer, I don't treat you guys any differently than my customers. And there's a reason why most computer shops close up in a few years, and why my shop has been open over 20 years, and I've been in the business over 34 years. It all kind of makes sense when you think about it. But the first thing I would do is reach out to support and see what they tell you. I'm assuming you have not done that yet. The email address, I should probably put that on the screen so you know what it is. You can reach out to us at any time. The email address is right here. By the way, if you're watching this video later after it airs, it's sort of like you've come to a party after the party's ended. You're going to be like, wow, this party sucks, nobody's here. Maybe you clicked on a video because you wanted to watch a battery replacement, right? When we have a party, were you just going for the drinks? For me, this is a hangout, and it's a fun way that we can all share our passion for computers and expand our interest, while also being getting to know one another, which you don't typically get to do on other YouTube channels. Typically, it's a very selfish thing, and people are making commercials and they're trying to sell you product. I'm not doing that here. Some people don't get it, and if you don't get it, that's okay. There's lots of other channels. In fact, the bulk of other channels are designed for people who don't get what I'm doing here. That's okay. I'm not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. This isn't what you're used to. But if you're curious on the difference this YouTube channel has compared to anything else, it's not about how fast we get to the work. It's about the friendships and the conversations we have in the chat room while I'm live. Have you ever experienced that before? I mean, I'm not asking my live chat. I'm asking those of you not in the live chat, or those of you watching the video. Or do you just have enough friends and you don't really want to talk to anybody? Again, this really isn't the right place for you if that's the case. But otherwise, we would love to have you join us. And if you missed it, we are live nearly every day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Phoenix time. And if you live somewhere else, which you probably do, just look at your clock and type into Google, what time is it in Phoenix, and do the math, and you'll know what time we are in your local time zone. It's really easy. So with that, we'll get you sorted there, Bernard, one way or the other, but do give SCD Keys a chance. Mecca Cameron says, I do not trust buying keys. Well, and that's the whole point. The whole point is you don't have to. I've got your back personally. Now, if you don't trust me, well, I mean, I don't know, if you don't give me an opportunity to prove it, I guess you can come up with anything you want to in your imagination. The hard work and time and effort I put into finding legitimate keys that are backed up by the seller is not a joke. My business is not a joke, and I don't roll the dice to stay in business. I don't trust pirated software. So if you want to go and download pirated software, that's on you. I would never do that to a customer. I would never, ever be so unprofessional and so disrespectful and so inconsiderate to a customer. And I likely wouldn't be in business anymore if I did. So to each their own, but the whole point of what I do is to extend my professionalism to my audience with the same professional courtesies, respect, and value for your money. I want to make sure you're getting a good deal and that you're going to be happy and want to come back again. It's not worth, what is a license for Windows 10? $15? What do you think I'm going to do? Go buy a Tesla and run away to Mexico? First of all, I'm not even the seller. I don't get $15. What's in it for me to do this for you? I'm just trying to help you. And if you're going to say, I don't need your help, okay, that's fine. So, you know, you don't know what you don't know. But again, to each their own. Now, let me go ahead and remove that email address. You've got it there. Be sure and spell it correctly. We usually respond to most emails, all emails, within 24 hours. If you haven't gotten a response from us within 24 hours, it might be in your spam folder, your junk folder, or maybe you misspelled our email address. So go back and look in your sent items or try again. After a second attempt in 24 hours, if you've not received a response from us, well, then I would strongly recommend you pop into our live chat and let us know. And we'll make sure we can figure out what's going on there. Again, no differently than a customer, I am treating you the same way I run a business, with the same level of courtesy and concern for each and every one of you. And sometimes when you get a customer who's trying to take advantage, as we do sometimes have people do that and reach out to us, I'm sure none of you, but we do get that from time to time, where the customer is so worried about being, scammed, but at the same time, as sellers or as people providing services, we get scammed too. Think about it. All right, let's see what we've got. Luke Chaffrey says, I trust you. Well, thank you. I trust you too. I have no reason not to. Until there's evidence proving otherwise, I think the benefit of the doubt should be the default. All right, let's see. Becca Cameron said 2 p.m. is Alabama time. Now, do keep in mind that when you guys adjust your clocks in the spring, we do not adjust our clocks ever. So adjust accordingly. Phoenix is one of the, or Arizona is one of the only states that does not observe daylight saving time. Johnny Weld said, only trust who Carey gives me, only that's it. Only use his sites. Thank you for your research and time in these companies. I'm looking out for others and looking out for others. Much appreciated. Well, thank you. I'm glad it's appreciated. Glad I didn't waste my time. Honestly, I had to do it anyway, right? Because I needed to provide for my customers. And I'm just extending that courtesy to people that tune into the channel, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And unless you have any evidence proving otherwise, there's nothing to complain about, right? If sometimes mistakes happen, we'll be there to help you get them corrected, regardless of whose fault the mistake is. Could be a mistake you made in the order or the way that you're using the product, or it could be that the seller has made a mistake. Mistakes happen. Have a little patience, a little tolerance, and understand you're going to be okay. All right. If I have to refund your $15 out of my pocket, even though I'm not the one who sold it to you, that's a small price to pay for you to have reassurance that going forward, for a fact, I got your back. If I'm here promoting it, it's not just words. Test me. Prove me wrong. That's all I'm saying. All right. As I mentioned, yesterday we didn't get very far because, again, I like to engage with everybody. And if everybody's being more outgoing and interactive with me, that takes priority. You guys take priority over this. So this is my coffee, okay? And we're enjoying our conversation. And you might be here because you're interested in the coffee. But at the same time, we're all here together to enjoy each other's company. If we're all passively watching and not participating, that's a very boring party. So glad I got dressed up for this. All right. Now, there is also a Wi-Fi card in here that's probably pretty old. And I was looking through my inventory last night to see what I've got for little M.2 Wi-Fi cards. And I've got this NIC Giga AX210, which is going to be a Wi-Fi 6E. Wi-Fi 7 requires a different kind of a slot. And this Wi-Fi doesn't really tell me anything other than it's AX. It doesn't give me Wi-Fi 5, I'm guessing. And you'll see there's the NGFF, or next generation form factor M.2 connector. versus the mini PCIe connector. They're two different connectors, and then Wi-Fi 7 has a different one. I don't know what it's called, but you'll find it won't even fit in the plug. If it fits in the plug, you're good to go. All right, that's pretty much all you need to know. In order for us to get to the battery on this, you know, it's really nice that they have this removable panel to get to the RAM, storage, and Wi-Fi card. These are the most common things people will want to upgrade or replace. However, on a laptop, I would also say a battery, because regardless if you actually use the battery or you keep your laptop plugged in all the time, or maybe even the laptop's been sitting brand new in a box for 4 years and you finally got around to opening it, your battery's already gone bad over time, regardless of how much or how little you've used it. So in that way, laptop batteries all have to be replaced, just like if you own a car for a few years, you're going to have to replace your car battery. It doesn't matter if you drive the car a lot or if you drive the car a little bit. The battery will almost always need to be replaced around the same period of time, regardless of use. It just deteriorates. So in that frame of mind, you would think that laptop batteries would be very simple to replace. But look at where we're at now. With cell phones you can't open and tablets you can't open, Microsoft Surface, these things are glued shut with the batteries inside. And what's happened is the manufacturers have said a couple of things here. And you can take either side of the fence. The manufacturer says, look, we can build this faster, cheaper, and more reliably if we keep the customers out of it. That's just the world we live in. Keep them out of it, it'll last longer. But what about the battery? Well, the other side of that is, by the time this needs a battery in, say, 4 or 5 years, the technology will have quadrupled in its capabilities. So replacing a battery to continue to use an obsolete technology would be encouraging your customers to eat stale food that could cause them harm. So if the battery is the reason the customer is replacing the unit, then the customer is going to get a brand new unit with a better screen and a faster processor and more storage and better security and full support. In that way, you're making sure your customer stays satisfied. But if your customer buys a product and they hold on to it for 10 years, and I don't even care what that product is other than, say, jewelry, we talk about a car or an appliance, it's going to be very hard for you to stay in business, number one. Unless you're charging a ton of money. And number two, at least when it comes to the internet and software development, your customer's machine, whatever it is, a phone, a tablet, a laptop, a desktop, it's having to work harder as the software gets easier to use. Such things as AI is very resource intensive. Being able to bring up Microsoft Copilot and directly ask it a question instead of using Google takes a lot of resources. If you want the latest version of Microsoft Office or the latest version of Adobe products, good luck running those on a machine 10 years old. It's going to struggle. It's going to feel slow because the machine wasn't built to have that many resources available, because 10 years ago it didn't need that many. Today, when you buy a modern machine, those resources are nothing. It's no big deal. Plus you have warranty, you have peace of mind, you have a brand new battery, everything's better, and you can have it right away. You don't have to wait for a repair, hope the repair was done right so you're not having to take it back. And then your repair typically only has a 30-day warranty for most places, and after 30 days it might go in for repair. It's like an old car and the parts start going. And the mechanic fixes one thing and then the next thing goes. The only difference is that if it's your brakes that go, there can be some serious consequences where you would have wished you just bought a newer car. It doesn't have to be brand new, but a newer one. Sometimes spending a little bit today can save you a ton tomorrow. Just saying. I'm not selling you anything. I'm just giving you my philosophy. I've learned it the hard way. All right? There's a number of times I thought I bought something at a good price, but I had to buy it 3 times. When if I'd have just bought a better thing at twice the original price of the thing I thought was cheaper, I would not have had all the stress and trouble of replacing it, and it wouldn't have cost me as much buying 3 things versus buying 1 that was twice as much. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, I just wish I had been able to have somebody explain that to me when I was younger. Cost me a lot of money to learn that lesson. Now, we have a number of cables that have to be disconnected because this whole back has to come off to get to this battery. As I mentioned, you know, you'd think a battery on a laptop would be easy. But these days, in most laptops, especially as they get them thinner and thinner, the batteries become more and more inaccessible for all the same reasons I've mentioned. But usually, they're not this difficult. Again, they can reduce the cost of manufacturing, and they can improve the overall reliability of the machine by keeping customers out of it. I know you all think that you can get in there just fine, and maybe you can, but you do not represent the majority of people that own computers, and the majority of people who own computers are not watching YouTube channels, or we'd have a much bigger chat room. I think the size of our chat room is fine, by the way, but I'm just saying we don't have 250,000 people in here, which would be a fraction of people who own computers. Our friend Buster joins us from Scotland with a £10 super chat. He says, hello, Carey and Mara, everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland. The temperature in Edinburgh today, 41 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 5 degrees Celsius. He says, I just popped in to say hello, and I will catch up tomorrow. Well, thank you, Buster. And, you know, your temperature there isn't that much different from us. We're here in Phoenix at, what's our temp today? We're at 63, but, and I know you're saying that's not close. At nighttime, it's getting below freezing here in Phoenix. So we're actually dipping into the mid 30 degree Fahrenheit range right now this week. So it's a little more relatable, only without any rain. We could use some rain, so could California. But all right, I want to just continue disassembling this laptop, and I just wanted to preface that everything you see here is not normal. This is not a normal battery replacement process. Unless you have some real fancy high-end gaming laptop, those are not only expensive, but they can be quite complex to take apart regardless of who makes them. This is Alienware. Alienware was bought by Dell. Dell has incorporated Alienware into their brand. And I think it's important, if you were going to take your laptop apart, use your cell phone camera and take pictures along the way so you have a point of reference where everything goes back, especially if you're dealing with a lot of these ribbon cables, or even like these little antenna wires. I see the black wire for the antenna is closest to me, and the white wire for the other antenna is closest to you. Now, does that matter? I don't know, but my OCD, I want to put every screw back where it goes. I don't want to use the wrong screw, even if it fits. And I want to put every wire, even if it doesn't matter which one's on the left and which one's on the right, the same way that I found it. That's how I was raised. It's part of who I am. And there's less odds for anything to go wrong because you think, well, these are all the same. And then sometimes if you think that way, you're going to be wrong. So I could avoid that by just simply taking a moment to take a picture so I don't have to remember, and then I can visually see where everything goes, because we have a lot of connectors on this board. Because this big piece of plastic back here has to come off, all of the cables that run behind here, like for the touchpad and the keyboard, these will interfere with our ability to pull this board, this plastic off. Those NVMe's, for example, they plug into this motherboard, but they sit on top of this plastic. So how can you take the plastic off where the NVMe's are attached? The plastic is interwoven, right? The NVMe drive goes underneath the plastic and into the circuit board. So all the storage components, for that reason, they need to be removed. Now, I suppose you might be able to leave the hard drive in and simply disconnect it, but we're not putting this back in. This is causing the whole system to run slow. Even if you're not using it, Windows is constantly checking. Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? It's called polling. As long as it's plugged in, you're using it and it's affecting your system performance, and it's another reason I don't recommend hard drives. All right, so I need to take all these screws out around the edges here. And what I try and do You know, it's funny. I've had people, they're like, you should get a magnetic cup to put all your screws in. And then they're like, what's your address? I want to send you something. I must have a half dozen magnetic cups. People think because I don't use one, I don't have one, and they don't ask. They just go, here, you need one of these. They'll send me a headband with a flashlight. I have that. I don't like using it. Please don't send them to me. It doesn't occur to some viewers that I have that and I just don't want to use it. Why would you not want to use it? Because I don't work that way. And one of the things I enjoy about doing my job is I get to do it the way I want to do it. You and I could go about diagnosing a computer very differently, but still end up getting to the fix. One of us might be faster than the other one, but we get to the same result. Now, if you notice the way I'm taking out the screws and setting them down, that screw right there is much taller. Let's see if I can go over to this other camera for a close-up. I don't know if this will work, but we'll try it. Let me come over here, go to camera, this camera right here. Will that show up? Looks like I got to tilt the camera down just a little bit. Bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to just take a quick little jaunt over here, see if I can't tilt this down. Why is it twisting left and right? I want it to go down, which I guess is this dial. I think I found it. Let's go down. Wow. Okay. I could go up just a little bit. I should get one of those remotes where I can do that. Motorized tripod head. Just set me back $800 a piece. All right. In the meantime, I'll just turn it by hand because, you know, this screw here is much taller than the other screws that we're removing along these edges. So the screw I took out here, that's the one closest to you. The one in the middle, so it's on my right, and they're going, and I'm placing them in the order I took them out. Someone else might say, well, you don't need to do that because all these three screws are the same as long as you put them on the sides. That's fine, that's true too. But this requires less thinking on my part, which I'm all about, right? I just want to go through the process because we got a lot more to take apart, and I'm not going to be able to remember everything I just did 10 minutes ago, especially when we get into all these little cables and things. So this just keeps it very simple, and anybody can do this. It doesn't require any special memory training or techniques to figure out, well, you'll know it's this screw, if this thread or that thread or this type of screw head. I don't need that level of technical stuff for taking screws out. So with those screws out, we also have to, I believe, I don't know if we have to remove, so these two cables, these two cables here, they look like they go to the main board and they're not interfering with the plastic housing. So just by visually looking and using critical thinking, this third one also, all three of these ribbons cables appear to go under the circuit board. But this wire to our Wi-Fi is riding on top, right? Because that's normally covered with this panel. And so those antennas are going to have to come off. But the Wi-Fi card, it needs to come out anyway. So there is a little cover covering the antennas that are just pushed down like buttons, like on a button shirt. They snap buttons, but they're super micro, teeny tiny. So let's go ahead and remove this little piece here. And what I'll do to remember, oh, and that piece is not as long as I thought it was. I'm going to keep that screw and that piece together because I know that is for, I've done enough Wi-Fi, they all have these little antenna covers. Sometimes they're plastic and glued down today. And then these antennas, this white and black antenna right here, these are snap-ins, and they don't have threads or anything, and they just pull straight up. Now, again, I'm reminding myself, and I'm saying it out loud in case I need to go back to this video, the white cable is towards you guys,
with the back of the laptop facing me. The black cable is towards the back of the laptop towards me. Now, some people may want to grab tweezers or pliers, but you've got to be very careful. These cables can be torn and ripped. So I prefer to use my fingers so I get an idea of how much tension I'm putting on the cable. And ideally, you're going to pull it from the connector. Don't grab the cable and pull it from the cable unless, you know, you're willing to accept that risk of ending up pulling the cable right out of its connector. And then an easy job just became a complicated job. Now I'm having a hard time getting this one cable out, this black cable. There it goes. I was about ready to grab some needle nose pliers or tweezers. And then this cable, which is our antennas, that just fits right up there like so. And we're going to need to thread that back through when we put the cover back on. Nothing about that is normal, by the way. Now, our little Wi-Fi card should just pop out. Usually they lift up, but you know what? It looks like the Wi-Fi card has this piece of plastic here right above it that prevents this card from coming out. So before we can get to that, we have to take this off first. The other thing I've noticed, or I've just now noticed it, is we have a couple of screws right here. Anything going down through the plastic in general has to come out. And I'm just trying to think about how I would remember where these go. I don't know what they're holding down, but they're definitely into a brass fitting. So I'm going to set that one there between these two because those are the ones in the corners. Mara's having a heart attack watching her baby have open heart surgery. Let's see. Am I missing anything else? Just looking around. I've never opened this laptop ever before. I've never opened one like it. This is a brand new experience for me, but in this industry, as long as I've been, most of these experiences are pretty much the same with slight design element changes, but overall, same basic kind of idea here. There's a big old speaker right here. If you're wondering what that is, it says Klipsch. That must be like a little subwoofer. Interesting. Boy, these gamers today, let me tell you. Okay, so that cable's out. This cable, I think, is going. I think I can take this cover off. And here's the other issue that you potentially run into is not only do laptop manufacturers quite frequently, you know, have a bunch of screws holding this cover down or holding two halves of the laptop together, they'll also have little plastic clips along the edges that are underneath and you can't see them until you pop them free. That's where finding other YouTube video, disassembly, teardowns, etc. can be helpful to know where the clips are. There's no shame in looking up other content creators' videos for the make and model of machine you're working on. As long as the video is clear to you and the shots are clear, you should be able to have a much easier time than having to figure it all out on your own. I did look at a couple of videos on the teardowns for this laptop, but I kind of skipped through them. I'm like, okay, all I need is the idea. I don't need all of the explanation. And at least that's what I think. I think I've got the gist of it, but we're about to find out if that's true or not. One way or another, I'll figure it out. So to separate the two halves, we usually need a thin piece of plastic. Some people would use a credit card back in the day. You definitely don't want to use a metal screwdriver because the plastic can give on the edges of the seams before the clips do. So what happens is you end up gouging all the edges. You know, some people don't care. Most people do care, especially if it's a $3,000 laptop. So we now have a tool called a spudger. I don't recall them being available in the 1990s, but maybe they've always been around and I was just late to the game. But spudgers are more and more common as things are getting clamshelled together. I do wish they would pick one or the other. Give me the clips with maybe a couple of screws, or give me a bunch of screws and just leave the clips out. Because over time, plastic gets brittle and it doesn't matter how gentle you are, those clips are going to break. In which case, you'll never know, so long as you have screws anyway, they were overkill. But we're definitely going to try to not damage any clips. And let me take a look down here for my spudging tool. Now I have several to choose from. I have one from a company called iFixit. They have whole kits for laptop repair that you can buy. And I'm just rifling through a bag because I don't have all of Studio C organized yet. Here we go. This is exactly what I was looking for. Well, no it isn't. This looks exactly like what I was looking for. This is a spudger tool. Now the one from iFixit has a bigger handle with one end. This one is metal, so you want to be careful with it. There are spudgers that are plastic, and usually they're sold as multiples in a bag. In other words, you're not just going to buy one plastic spudger, because the spudger is the thing that's supposed to take all the damage. And then when it's all screwed up and you can't really use it much anymore because it's not, all the edges aren't smooth, you throw it in the garbage or the recycle bin and you grab the next one out of the bag. They're disposable and they're meant to take the damage instead of whatever delicate electronics you're working on. When you deal with a metal one, this will last a long, long time. And if you're gouging the metal, you're definitely not doing it right. So this is a tool you should have for indefinitely. Whereas the plastic ones, as I mentioned, the edges get rough and they're intended to, and you dispose of them. Now, where is the seam? I feel a seam right here. Ooh. Oh. Yeah, it's like cracking knuckles. Once you get it started, like I can put my finger in the seam here and just run my finger down the seam. And again, if you encounter any resistance, keep in mind you might have missed a screw. So don't be too rough with it. It should, oof, that one's tight. It shouldn't fight you too much, and you will, if you've never done it before, you'll start to get a feel for it, and you'll know from experience if you're applying too much pressure. You'll say, well, you know, that's not normal. Now I'm going to open up the screen here just to see if I can't maybe get some little more play out of the lid. Something is holding us in right here, right at this point. And I just want to make sure we don't have any screw or anything I missed in this area. If so, if we're clear, then I want to find the clip, if it is in fact a clip, that is being stubborn with us. And we just need to bend the plastic clip away from whatever little plastic ledge the clip is hooked onto. That's how these little laptop clips work. Boy, this whole side of the laptop, and in particular, right there, you can see, well, you might not be able to see, but we're getting a lot of resistance. I want to show you this. I can lift both edges, but right here does not budge. The answer for this isn't, let's give it some more force. Instead, we have to think, what is holding somewhere right around this area here? There's something in here that is holding us back. So I want to look at this side, and I want to look again at this side, and just double check that I have not missed a black screw against a black case. It's something very easily missed. On the other hand, it's never been opened in 15 years, and it just might be really tight. So we're going to apply a little bit more force once we've eliminated the fact of the easy things. Is there a screw, right? The easy and obvious things we're going to check first. So as I look through here, there is in fact a screw right here that I did not see. It's right there. It's a black screw on a black case. Now, these are the kind of lessons you're not typically going to see on other YouTube channels because they would edit all that out. They go, well, you got to remove this screw, this screw, this screw, but they don't tell you how they know that. You might find out the reason they know that is because they might have damaged the laptop and then just edited that out when they, you know, struggled and gouged the side of the laptop trying to get it open. So I'm here to show you in real time, unscripted and unedited, how a real technician, or at least from my perspective as a real technician, does the work in a methodical, critical thinking, logical, reverse engineering mindset way. Now look, if all you did all day was work on Dell computers, you could do this job way faster than me. There's a great YouTube channel and a company, by the way, that sells Dell laptop parts. They're called Parts People, Parts-People. You can look them up on YouTube here, Parts-People. And they have excellent Dell only, Dell focused teardowns and how-tos, and also sell the parts. So they'll sell, Parts People will sell a Dell keyboard and then make a video on how to replace the keyboard for that specific Dell. But if you own any other brand, Parts People ain't for you, okay? Now that I've removed that third screw and I put it up here where I'm going to be able to see it, let me try this again. Remember, there's an amount of force that I'm feeling for, and the minute it is different, I'm slowing down and checking to see what I'm missing. Brute force is never the answer. So right now, if I rotate this a bit, I want you to see how the plastic clips are holding in the edge of this. And if I slide my finger down, it should just start to pop. And then we can do the same thing on the other side. And the reason I'm being so cautious, and by the way, you might want to put a towel or something down so you're not scuffing up the case on your laptop. See that? We're just sliding fingers down. Now, if your fingers are more sensitive or too wide, you would use your spudger tool and just slide your spudger tool down. This is almost universal for electronics today. I do feel like the amount of clips they're using and the amount of screws they're using is overkill. Like, pick one. Put a couple of screws and a lot of clips, or a couple of clips and a lot of screws. But Dell, and a lot of laptop manufacturers, but Dell in particular, boy, they like to use a lot of both. And it's a little nerve-wracking because screws are much more definitive when they come out. The clips, like I say, they get brittle over time. And I don't want to break the clips, even though the clips, you'll be fine without them. I just would rather return it to the customer in the same condition, better condition than it was given to me for repair or service. Now, right now, I am getting some resistance all the way here at the back. So as I start to pull on this, it's not popping. I'm wondering if I might have missed some screws around the back. I don't know. Like I said, I've never opened one of these before. I'm sure the Parts People could do this blindfolded. But remember, I'm going to work on whatever rolls in here. If it's an Acer, if it's a Lenovo, if it's a Dell or an HP, Parts People won't do that. So it's one thing to be a specialist, and it's another to be, well, just a support tech. And yes, I see there are two screws. I see one here and one here. Now, I can't help but assume that's maybe what's holding this hole in, and I can't believe I missed them. I thought I got these rear screws when I took the screws out from, well, from up here, right? There's all these screws up here that we took out, but now there's these screws on the hinges, which I wouldn't think were necessary, but again, these laptop designs are unique from each manufacturer and even from each model from each manufacturer. And it's quite possible that this is not found anywhere else, this particular type of teardown, even from Dell models. Now here's the thing, I have to remember where these hinge screws come out, because the hinge screws are usually different than the rest of the screws that we've removed. I'm trying to think how I want to do that. I suppose since these two tall screws were the ones I thought were hinge screws, I'll put these right behind them because they do kind of, one goes here, one goes there. That's how I'm going to remember where they go back. Now, unless I knock my table over or swipe something across the table and the screws fall on the floor, then I'm going to have to play this video back to figure out where they go. You definitely don't want to put a short screw in where a long screw goes, because even though it may fit, the long screw, you're going to find out, isn't going to seat all the way down if it's not in the right place. And then you're going to have to dig each screw out one more time, unscrew them out, and figure out where did your short one go. And that must be where the long one goes. Yeah. It's great if you like that kind of musical chairs with the screws, but I'd prefer to get it right the first time, even if the first time takes a little bit longer. Okay, so with those two screws now removed, will it open up? Let's find out. And you can see every time I put any pressure on this plastic lid, it just snaps right back in, which is really annoying. Let me lift this up here. And I want to just try and lift straight up on it, which is going to be very difficult to show you. But essentially, what I want to try and do here is see if we can get this side to pop up. Obviously, the screen has to be open and out of the way. We are having some difficulties in this corner, and that's pretty normal. Sometimes on laptops, what I've encountered is that the rear part of the lid has to lift straight up and come out on an angle towards the front, because the plastic, the hinges is more enforced in order to take on the weight of the screen opening and closing. And if you're aware of laptops at all, you know hinges, especially on older laptops, are one of the first things to go from just open and closed, open and closed, open and closed. It wears the plastic out, it cracks, and the screen doesn't sit right. And depending on the laptop, it's probably not worth fixing. I have a friend of mine that has a Panasonic Toughbook, and he loves that Toughbook. And he's had it for over a decade. And his hinge broke, and I said, man, I don't know. I don't know that I'd replace it. Well, my friend's pretty handy with projects, let's just say. Got some epoxy, like some really good strong epoxy, and basically epoxied the plastic back together. He knows what he's doing. Reassembled it, opens and closes just fine. And I was like, well, how long do you think that's going to last? So I don't know. But he's happy today. And, you know, he does know what he's doing. It's quite honestly maybe better than how it was originally designed, for all I know. When my friend was fixing it, he didn't have a budget he had to stay within and a manager he had to please. He built it and repaired it to his level. And again, he knows what he's doing in that kind of stuff with regards to generic repair, let's just say, primarily with cars. But this stuff isn't that different. So I am still struggling with this back area here. There's some piece of this I am missing. And this is where it gets a little nerve-wracking. If you're working on somebody else's stuff, okay, this is not my laptop. Sort of, if you break it, you bought it when you're in this business. And if you're not willing to take the risk, then you're better off declining the job. What is holding us in here? There is something else holding the back in. I don't know what else there is that I'm missing. You know what it could be? I was going to say it could be that the screen has to come off with one half or the other. Well, I suppose that's obvious, isn't it? But the screen should not be connected to the bottom half that we're trying to remove. So I'm hoping it's plastic clips. Now, here's a little piece of plastic on the table right here. I don't know if you guys can see that. But this little piece right there, that's a piece of plastic that came from inside of this laptop. It was not here on the table when we started. Where did it come from? What does it go to? No one will ever know. It's just either one of the edges that the clip attaches to, or a clip, or some other piece of plastic that over 10 years has become brittle. And even though I'm being extra gentle, that has come out of there. Or maybe it was in there loose, broken off already, and by opening it, it fell out and it's been rattling in there. I don't know, but it's not critical, but it's what makes me justifiably very cautious as I'm opening these machines up. You know, whether or not I caused it, I can't tell you. I just don't know if it was already there because I don't know where it came from. I didn't feel anything snap or break. But that doesn't mean something didn't snap or break. So anyway, it doesn't matter. We still have to march forward and continue the job. And, you know, sometimes you'll get these little reminders. Slow down. Don't be forceful with it. What I'm going to do is use the spudger and find a seam and see if I can get the spudger in the seam here, because there is definitely something we're missing with regards to separating these two pieces. I mean, that does not want to budge. I'm in the seam and you can see the spudger. Wait a minute. Oh, they're clips. Okay, it is clips. Whew. Those are tight. Holy cow. Well, that's enough to give you a heart attack, isn't it? Now again, on a $300 laptop, it's a little less stressful because, you know, there's not as much at risk. And then when you've got a laptop that you become emotionally attached to, right? I mean, for Mara, this isn't just a laptop. This is like a digital friend. And if I'm disrespectful to her digital friend, she's going to be angry at me. But again, if this were a customer's machine and they're entrusting me with it, you definitely want to make sure that you treat it as though it were your own and it's the only one you have. Customer will never complain about that. Unless, of course, you don't give it back. It's mine. You can't have it. All right, let's try this other corner. So I'm trying to apply a little pressure to separate the two seams. But again, if you're not at the right angle, you could snap the plastic clips off if it's plastic clips holding it. If there are screws or other items that have to come out, you'll break. And this would be worse, is if you broke the screw point, you broke the mount or damaged the screw, then it'll never sit back together completely closed without glue. And that's just humiliating if that's the kind of work that you end up doing and your customer's like, you know, you didn't put this back together right, and you have to say, well, it can't go back together right anymore. I don't think your customer will be too happy with you. Yeah, definitely something else is still got us. I'm wondering if I can close the lid, because for me to get to the seam behind the lid is kind of in the way. Sometimes with some laptops you have to open the lid, and other times to get the cover off you have to close the lid, and maybe this is one of those. Close the lid. What if we meet it halfway? We'll kind of close it a little bit there. See, the problem is I can't tell where the seam is going. It kind of blends into the hinge. and then it just kind of vanishes. Something else that's holding us right about, I'm going to guess it's right, well, it's at the hinge. It's exactly where it's at. It's right here. We're having a seam. Yeah, it's exactly at the hinge. It's exactly where a problem is. So you can absolutely feel it. And one of the things that you'll hear me talk a lot about that I think other channels completely, and many viewers miss, when we talk about computers, it's also about feeling. It's not just about what a benchmark number says. It's about, does it feel slow? Does it feel right? Does it feel fast? In the same way, those feelings you're never going to get from virtual reality, right? Virtual reality isn't going to imitate gravity, heat, hunger, thirst, those senses that we have, right? It's just visual. It's one sense. Virtual reality is one sense. It's just your vision. What about your 4 other senses? We have 5, right? Well, I guess virtual reality could do 2 senses, hearing and vision. That's it. So it's almost like you're on painkillers, where you're just numb. If you drive in a race car and you're feeling all the bumps on the road and you're being thrown against the side of the car when you take a high-speed turn and you skid into the wall and snap your leg in half and your life flashes before your eyes, that's very different than in Forza. I'm just saying, the momentum and feeling of real risk is numbed out. So if you were doing that same race on painkillers and slammed into the wall, that would probably be like VR. So for me, VR is very lacking in the sense that one of the reasons I do things is for the to activate my senses. And if all my senses aren't being activated, I am left dissatisfied. Like the whole feeling of it is plastic and shallow and fake. But that's just me. I think I'm going to take a little cheat and I'm going to take a look at a YouTube video to see what's going on here. As I mentioned, there's a lot of YouTube content creators that have shown the teardown on these. And I kind of skipped through it. And for me, I was like, all right, I got the gist of it. But it looks like there needs to be some special detail in paying attention to the rear hinges and how these are going to come off. So bear with me for a second while I'll pull up just a random video. But just before I do that, let me say hello here to Tim Gillis joining us here. He says he had an issue. I guess we're back to talking about the product keys. This was a while back, by the way. He didn't just say it, I just noticed it. He goes, I had an issue with a product key purchased from SCD Keys, but I worked through chat and they gave me a brand new key that worked, and I was impressed. That's the difference between the keys I sell and the keys other people sell. Maybe you'll get good service from the keys other people are endorsing. Maybe you won't. But one way or the other, if you're using the links that I endorse here, I guarantee it. I personally guarantee it. One way or the other. We'll get it sorted. There's Chris Garrett joining us and saying hello and mentions there are also manuals. This is true as well, especially with the right to repair things going on. There are often manuals available on disassembly from the manufacturers. I'm a visual person. So if you give me a book of instruction or a book of pictures, I'm going to select the picture book. I am a visual learner. When you read something, you have to imagine it in your head. And that's well and good for a science fiction novel. But for me, in a repair manual, telling me to remove the left nut torque converter bolt from the bell housing is absolutely a waste of words, because I don't know what a bell housing looks like. I don't know what side of the car is the left or right. Is that from looking behind the car or looking at the car from the front of the car? Is it the driver's side or the passenger side? Because that never changes, but right and left do change depending on where you're standing. And what the heck does the torque converter bolt look like? Is it a big bolt? Is it a little bolt? Is it socketed? Is it have a thread, a head, right? Is it a cross thread or a Torx? What is it? So I need a picture with an arrow going this here, this bolt, take that out. And then I need a wider picture to show me where on the car is it. Is it over here or is it over here? I need some point of reference. Now, if you're a mechanic and you do this all the time and you have an idea of where the torque converter bolts are, and it just kind of varies a little bit from one manufacturer to another, then that's all you need. Or if you're somebody who's very good at reading manuals and visualizing something you've never experienced before, well, you have a talent I don't have. But yes, do know that there are repair manuals. In fact, iFixit offers duplicates of those repair manuals if you have a hard time finding them. For me personally, I'd rather watch somebody do it, because then I can interpret it in a way that I understand it. And if I can understand it, I can then put it into words I hope you guys understand much easier. And the reason I do that is I say, I wish somebody would have explained it to me this way. But now that I'm able to explain it, now that I understand it, and I'm not just following a ritual, now I can rephrase it in a way that I wish somebody had phrased it to me, but I'm going to do that for you. And that's my process. That's why I do it like that. And Bruce says, hey, it's not a knock on Carey, just an awareness that there are manuals. That's why I brought it up. You're absolutely right. And that may be your preference, is to look at the manual. But, and I failed to mention it, and I appreciate, bringing that up, because even though it's not an option for me, it may be an option for you. So what I want to do is I'm going to pull up a YouTube channel. Let's just go to YouTube here. And we're going to look for an Alienware, same thing. And this is a 17R3, and I'll use the word disassembly or teardown. And then what I'm going to do is I see there's a number of videos, and some are clearer than others, let's just say. Some are highly edited and 3 minutes long, which is not good enough for me. And others are, over an hour, which may be breaking it down to the point of taking out circuit boards and heat sinks and just showing a complete disassembly, which again, it's the exact opposite. Now it's TMI, too much information. So I'm going to just pick one here randomly, and I'm going to fast forward to where they get the rear panel off. Okay, here we go. I'm just a little curious. It looked like they took out screws I don't remember taking out. So I want to take another look, see if I've missed any. I did. I see 1, 2, 3. So sometimes, watching these repair videos can draw attention to something that's really obvious in the video. Once you see it in the video, you go, oh, I didn't see those. And that's just what happened to me right now. Let me go back to back here to this camera. What the gentleman in the camera, I just saw him remove screws here, here, and here above the RAM. Right up here. See, I bet you even you have a hard time seeing these. They are black screws on a black case. No, I don't know why they do this. Nobody's looking underneath there. You could have given me silver screws. But there are 3 screws completely missed by me. And that's likely going to make this removal far more difficult if you don't take out all the screws. So if you look on the table, look how many screws we've taken out already. This is ridiculous. But yes, there are screws that need to come out still. And I'm trying to get my orientation so I know where to set these screws I'm about to take out. There's one right up here, which you probably can't really see too well, but there's one right here, there's one right here, and there's one right here. Like, that's a lot that I missed. Even for me, that's a lot. So what I'm going to do, when I was removing these screws initially, I had the back of the laptop towards me. And this little screw that I've removed right here, I'm going to put it in front of the tall screws that I took out right here. See how it's right in? Well, you probably can't see that. Let's go to a wider angle. The tall screw went in here, and the screw I just removed goes in right there. And then there's another one, which is going to be to my right. Yeah, that can make a big difference. And I'll put that one just to the right. Getting a little crowded here with the screws. I'm trying to keep them up on their heads because it just keeps it straight for me to understand the pattern that they were in. Now, even though all 3 of these black screws I'm removing could easily be exchanged within any of those 3 holes, once again, for the reasons I've already mentioned, I want to put it back exactly the way I found it. Now, if I were working on Alienware laptops every day, I might have a bucket of extra screws and I could just go in the bucket, get the screw I needed, because I would know and be familiar with which screw goes into which hole. But having only done this for the very first time and likely never ever doing this again, I will not retain this information other than to be able to play this video back if need be. Now, with those screws removed, does that make any difference? I mean, I'm getting a lot more play. A lot more. I mean, this thing is moving a lot more than it did before. But I am still feeling something else. Could be a clip, I don't know. And for that reason, I'm going to go back over to the same video I was just on and see if I'm missing anything else or what the trick is to getting the back off. Now, most of these teardown videos show those ribbon cables coming out. And I don't necessarily agree that that has to happen. I think... Some of the problems with laptop teardown videos is the person making the video might be tearing the entire laptop down versus just what we need to tear down to do the work that we're intending to do. And, you know, look, if you want to take out screws you don't need to take out or take out components you don't need to take out, that's up to you. But, you know, for example, I'm seeing all of the ribbon cables removed from here, but I don't think they need to come off. So this person is now struggling to separate. Yeah, they got a spudger. They're starting to unclick the front and the sides just like we have in the same, you know, the hinges are coming off last.
there's he's got a little ribbon cable he's struggling with that's going somewhere. Let me see. You know, back in the day, we would not have this. We would not have YouTube to assist us. And we would have to figure this out on our own, which would be even a slower process. Okay, he's struggling with the hinges as well. So I feel better about that. Oh, okay. I see. I see. Well, it appears those ribbon cables will need to come out. It didn't look like they did. I thought I was being clever by not removing them. And again, another reason for my caution. And what it appears from looking at the other person's video is the hinges are going to stay attached. When we lift this cover up, and this might be obvious to some of you, but on many laptops, half of the hinge comes off, the top half of it. And what we're running into are these ribbon cables down here. They're going through a metal cover, which I assumed was a part of the bottom of this piece I'm trying to remove. But it appears it is not. It appears the metal that these cables are coming through, the cables go with the top, but the metal stays. And so what ends up happening is if you try and remove this, and we didn't get that far yet, but if you get that far where you're starting to remove, yeah, see, to me, the whole hinge and everything wants to come up here. But what's going to happen is, as you separate these two pieces, you're going to run into some resistance that's going to pull tension onto these cables. And obviously, until you disconnect these cables, it's not going to release. Now, as you can see, as I'm bending this back, we are not getting any tension on these cables at all. And it showed that this person removed this cable, this cable, this cable, and this cable, and even this one. Which, again, it's not rocket science to take these things off and back on again. I just prefer not to unless I have to. And then when they remove this, what they're doing is they're separating this entire lid away from the hinges. So the hinges themselves, if I turn it this way so you can get my perspective on this, the hinges themselves are actually coming free. So it may be that those hinge screws can just stay where they were. These screws right here, because it appears this whole piece that bubbles out stays connected the whole time. However, I don't know for a fact that there aren't some like L brackets that also hold on to this lid, so I'm in no hurry to put those screws back. On the other hand, because I'm getting play in the hinge now moving up and down, that may give me more resistance as far as pulling this top off. Without the hinge being locked in place, it might just be moving the hinge back and forth, not letting the top go. So we have a couple things we need to work on. First and foremost, it seems I'm pretty confident now, after a closer look, that these ribbon cables need to come off, which I'm disappointed about because I thought
I just thought this whole piece would come off with the top, but it doesn't. The good news is putting these ribbon cables back should be pretty obvious because they just go straight across and plug in. So you're not going to cross them over. You don't bend them to one side or the other. When we feed the cables back through the holes when we're done, they're going to perfectly align with the connector they plug into. But because these are ribbon cables, they're delicate and they don't have any physical pins in the sense of like a USB cable that you plug into a motherboard header. These are like sleeves they fit into, and then they lock down typically on the edges, and it can often require really good lighting in your room, a strong magnifying pair of glasses, and sometimes a really teeny tiny screwdriver or pair of pliers to get up underneath the edge of the end of the sleeve and lift up each side, because that's what locks that cable into the sleeve. They're definitely not my favorite connector. And I found some more screws. There's a screw here, and there's a screw here. Oh, and there's a screw here. What? That's interesting because this really wanted to separate without... What the heck? Yeah, there's a screw right here that's going through the plastic into the circuit board. There's a screw right here going through the plastic and into the circuit board. But I don't... Remember, we're not taking the back off, right? This circuit board clearly stays attached to the back. We're taking the top off where the keyboard is. So maybe these screws don't need to come out, or maybe it does. You see, these screws, they quite often hold down things like the keyboard or the trackpad. And they're attached to the metal plate, and this metal plate supposedly is the thing that we're moving around by disconnecting these cables. Yeah, we have a screw right here. Now, these screws could also be used to just simply hold the circuit board that we're leaving in. That's why I say there can be a disassembly of far greater than what we actually need to do. And I'd rather go slower and only take out what I need to, or what I believe I need to, than to just wildly go in there and take out everything and then figure out how it all goes back together. When a lot of content creators do teardowns of laptops, they will disassemble every single component and lay it all out on a table, like you'll see Chef Ramsay do with taking all the meat out of a lobster and placing all the meat into the shape of the lobster it came out of. We don't need to go to that level, and or at least I don't think I do. And I'm just not quite sure where the other end of these cables go with regards to like, I know that's the battery cable, but with regards to just getting it open to change the battery, I don't know if all of that's required or not. It seems a little bit over the top. Like, I knew this was going to be a big job when I started it. But I might have glanced a little too casually and assumed, okay, you know, I've seen that before, I've done that before, you know, all that kind of familiarity, while completely missing all of the detail. So I want to go back and look again at this gentleman's disassembly here, only because I'm curious. Actually, let me see him take the lid off the top. Oh, Oh my gosh, there is another cable that you can't even get to until you remove the top about an inch away so you can get behind it. Wow, what a mess. Wow. And then he's finally got the bottom off of it. But the circuit board is not attached. So what is on the bottom, the bottom we're trying to remove, the keyboard and the mouse are attached. That's it. So I'm a little curious as to, okay, he's looking at the bottom now. And the 3 ribbon cables do in fact connect the keyboard and the trackpad and everything that are attached. Those absolutely have to come off. Now, what other cables he had to remove? I'm not sure he had to remove those. Or I haven't reached that point yet where I understand why. He's got a great top-down camera shot with good lighting, but there's no real close-ups. So I'm doing my best to kind of understand what he's pointing out here. I would like to see how many screws he ended up taking out in total. He's definitely taking those screws out I pointed out that I think don't need to come out. He's taken one of them out anyway. Yeah, he's taking them all. Okay, well, I mean, I'd rather play it safe. I just feel like that just doesn't seem right to me. You see, there's a couple of screws here. There's one here, and there's one hidden, as if those aren't hidden. No, those are. Once you see them, but there's one right in between them. And I can't tell if he's taken that one out or not, but I guess the safe bet is to take them out. Wow. How many screws have we taken out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15, 16, 17, 18, 21. And then there's 3 more for a total of 24. And then the screws that hold the battery down we haven't even gotten to yet. It's just a battery. How hard could it be? Famous last words. Now these screws are different length than all the others too. Interesting. So if this is the front of the laptop, then that one would go there. This is a very shallow screw, which I don't think needs to come out, but we're going to take it out. And then this one right here, that one's going to go right there. So you can imagine if I swept the table accidentally, like if a cable had swept the table or something slid and knocked all these screws down. It's important to know how many screws you've taken out in a worst case scenario. The problem, as I mentioned, with like a magnetic jar is it wouldn't be big enough for this. And then I'd have to set different magnetic jars in a different order. And then when you go to get the screws out, sometimes the whole jar lifts up and it knocks all the other screws sideways. I don't like those magnetic trays at all. Some people have big mats and they have little squares, magnetic squares, and they put everything in a little square. I don't have that much table room. But, you know, I'm not telling you how you should do it. I'm just explaining why you might look at this and go, Well, he's doing it the hard way. Well, I have a limited amount of space to work in, and I'm not working alone. I have an entire worldwide audience watching me, and it does absolutely make me, it adds another level of pressure that I would not have if I were at home doing this by myself without any cameras. I could do whatever I wanted to without somebody breathing down the back of my neck. The problem is, a lot of times when I'm teaching something I've done 1,000 times before. And it's very simple for me. But there's this crossover where I've changed out laptop batteries over the years, and some of them are pretty complex. This one is the most complex I have worked on in a very long time. But I also was getting bored. That's another laptop battery. This one has definitely reinvigorated my excitement for what I do. But if I did this every day where I'm constantly having to figure it out, I would get frustrated and want to quit. So there's this fine balance between boredom, because it's very familiar to me, I've done this a lot of times, and frustration because how could this be so complicated? I've done this 1,000 times. And somewhere in there, hopefully we find a balance. But I will tell you that doing this for the very first time with no rehearsal, no sort of prep other than just skimming through a couple videos, is definitely a little risky for me to do with regards to gaining or losing viewer confidence. But this is typically how the job used to be done in the 90s, where you didn't have these resources available. On the other hand, in the 90s, laptops generally weren't this hard to work on. There were a couple. They were like these big, massive desktop replacement laptops that were this big. They had 2 hard drives in them that were under the keyboard that required a 60% disassembly, and the drives would fail constantly because they're just mechanical drives. But because I worked at a place that sold a specific model or a specific manufacturer, they didn't change that much from model to model. So once you got the first one out of the way, the others were very simple. This kind of disassembly is pretty rare these days, but exists on really expensive high-end gaming laptops to this day. What else do I want to do? Those are my regulars. These are my magnifiers. So again, I really don't want to pull on the cables. We want to kind of get under the lip of the connector with a very small flat edge driver and just twist it, and it should, with a little bit of assistance, kind of go back and forth a little bit here. There, and it just pops out. No damage to the cable or connector. Again, here we've got another one of these sleeved connectors. This one's pretty easy in that it has a large lip on it for the screwdriver to get under. And then that sleeve cover lifts up, and then the cable can slide out of the sleeve very easily. Don't just pull the cable out. This one doesn't have that. This one we've got to go to each edge. Sometimes you can just use your fingernails and get under each edge and lift them both up. It'll move up about 1.5 millimeters, and then the cable just slides right out. You don't have to worry about putting these cables in backwards. They only go in one way, and they fit precisely, so you don't have to worry about the cable being off. When you put these cables back, you just want to make sure they're not tilted. They've got to go in straight. Otherwise, obviously, the connectors won't meet up correctly. This one also just has 2 edges to it. If I can get my fingernails under it. There's one, there's the other. And that'll just pop right out without any resistance. This ribbon cable should slide in and out loosely. And then when you push the cap back on it, then it tightens it up and locks it in place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cables disconnected. How many screws? 24 screws. We haven't yet gotten access to the battery. There is a fan connector here, which I think, famous last words, can be left alone, left in place. So these two cables, one on each side here, power these fans, and the fan should be staying in place when we take the keyboard and trackpad off from the top. All is one, you know, it's all connected to the front bezel that we're trying to remove here. And underneath that front bezel, we will find our battery. Then the battery will have a couple cables, that, well, one for the battery and probably one for the speakers that has to get removed. Then the screws for hold the battery in, those come out. Then we can check and make sure if we've got the right battery. And if we don't, we stop where we're at and get a replacement battery, because I don't want to put all this back together only to have to turn around and take it back apart again. Because every time you do that, you risk damaging something. Oh, I was going this way, wasn't I? So every time I close that lid, I'm snapping these little plastic clips back in. So with the same kind of care I've already done before, I'm going to slide my fingers to get that to unsnap again. Such a hassle. Oh, now it's coming right up. Look at that. What a difference in how much effort I am having to put into removing this. Yeah, there is a cable that I saw in that video where the gentleman was removing. Remember I said you had to pull this up and pull it back about an inch. It's actually closer to about 3 inches. And there is another cable here. It says MB or motherboard that's going directly, I'm going to guess, to all these LEDs and power switch. And so that is another cable that's going to slide in that's covered with that tape. But now that we have offset the lid, it won't snap back in. Just want to just double check. Oh yeah, all that popped out okay. And I see a battery. It's a boy. Now these connectors are a little bit different than the other ribbon connectors in that when you see that big metal top, usually that metal is on 2 hinges and it swings open and then the cable gets released. Then you gently put the cable back in and swing the lid back closed. Look, I wish they were all that way, quite frankly. That locks it in. So let me just take a look here with my better glasses and see where that pops up. AAP20 power cable is what that says. And then does it go up towards me or away from me? There's a piece of plastic that's probably as much of an insulator as it is anything else. It's sitting right on top of this. And what I want to do is peel this tape back. It's like plastic tape or a bit of plastic with adhesive on the back of it. And it looks like it's mostly there. Well, I suppose it keeps that hinge I was describing from popping open like in transport, as a laptop is very portable. And also it looks like it doesn't want the metal to potentially contact anything underneath the keyboard or underneath this bezel. There we go. Now I should be able to just pop that open. This is one of my favorite little screwdrivers. Like when you need delicate work, I mean, a jeweler's screwdriver is great, don't get me wrong, but this has enough thickness, it doesn't bend as easily as a jeweler's driver. This one may be a little too big. Let's see. I think I'm opening it in the right direction, but I'm not positive. And whenever you use like a metal bladed tool, and in this case just a small flat edge screwdriver, and you get it underneath the connector and you twist it, you don't want to cause any damage potentially to the circuit board. You don't want to gouge into that. So I'm being very, very cautious here because I'm not confident which way this swings open, which again, I could probably just look at that other person's video and see. But it does appear that I see a little tiny lip under here. Now, it's making me nervous. I'm going to just pull that video up real quick. Let me see how somebody else did it, and I'll just do it that way. That is way too delicate for me to figure out the hard way. He's peeling the tape back, but he's not releasing the mechanism. He's literally pulling the connector out. It's not really the way you're supposed to do it. So that is a concern I have with some of the content creation here on YouTube, is there's nobody to technically approve it, like a technical editor. And so somebody might be demonstrating a more brutal removal process, which, you know, at the end of the day might be okay, but usually these connectors open. That's the thing. And when they open, the cable slides right out. This person forced it out, which is, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. It's entirely possible that one of the reasons I'm struggling with it is it doesn't open and it has to be forced out. I don't know. This is a different connector than we've seen elsewhere on the laptop, and so there is no consistency to say, well, since that one did it this way, this one also does it that way. That's a little frustrating as a tech because I see another cable here and its connector is also different. This one has a metal shield over it, and usually these metal shields open. And the problem is, with the cable already in it and the tape on top of it, it's hard to see how they go together. So until I take it out, then I can see which part of the metal shield comes up, or if it comes up at all. So I think I'm gonna gently wiggle and pull. It's just definitely not the right way to do this. Oh, okay. This one has maybe. This one has a piece of metal, almost like a grounding strap, that folds down. It's like it's all one piece, but it bends down. Now the question is, do you bend that up to release the cable, or if you bend that up, will it permanently stay up and then it won't connect the cable properly? That, again, I'm a little nervous about. So I'm going to continue what I was doing here. Give me that little driver. Let's see if we can get that in here. Oh gosh, that's not right. There's no way that's right. There it is. Okay. Okay. Jeez. Was I sweating? Sponge? As I'm pulling back on the tape, I'm seeing actual wires. Insulated wires, not bare wires. And I'm like, I shouldn't be seeing wires. But now that I've got that out, now I can, okay. Okay, so that metal I told you that was bent, that's actually on the the cable. It's not on the connector side. Usually, this little piece of metal would pull up or move forward or backward, and it does seem to be locked in there. This is finally the piece we've been trying to take off for the last two shows, right? Today and yesterday. And let me bring it up to you, and I'll show you why those cables needed to be disconnected. And this connector I've been struggling with, why I was struggling with it. So here it says power right here. And then when you follow this cable over, you see it's got the tape on it, and then it's got this metal piece around the plug. And as you pull this back, this tape that's on it, you'll see the wires going into the plug. That's what got me a little nervous. And this metal matches up with the other metal of the socket it plugs into, and it looks like it's all one piece if you've never seen one before. Now here we can see mount points for the screws that we've removed, right? All of these screws here. And we can see all of those cables that were feeded through, which I thought this whole piece, from what it looked like these cables were threaded through, but they actually thread through the plastic. They stay attached because this is the back of your keyboard. This is the back of your trackpad. You've got your power button and LEDs all up here. So all of this is going to stay connected. And this is the communication to the trackpad, the buttons, the keyboard. This has some function keys, probably programmable, I'm going to guess, macros that you can program, which is a nice feature, which makes this keyboard a little bit more complex than a standard keyboard. But again, you've got all your mount points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and there is no piece coming down from the edge, so the rear screws I took out from the hinges over here, those screws could have stayed in. I did not need to take those out, but that's super easy, and now I know. And then there's a couple of mount points here, which is likely maybe part of the little screws I had taken out. I'm not sure. I still feel like I took out way more screws than I needed to. But it's so complex, I'm not even sure, looking at it right now, that maybe all that work was in fact necessary. I don't know. The important thing is we got there, right? Maybe I took the scenic road. I didn't take the shortcut, but I got to my destination, and I did so, at least so far, without breaking anything, because then that kind of defeats the whole purpose of upgrading it. Now we can finally get a look in here, and this funky thing right across here, this is our battery. When your laptop is overheating, it's likely not overheating because of thermal compound. It's overheating because these fins have clogged up, or, and this sucks by the way, if you understand the way that these fans work, when you see fans that look like this, you'll see a fan on the top left and the top right, okay? The way these fans work is almost like your power supply. So, I don't know if I have a power supply around here, but effectively your power supply fan does not blow air out, it brings air in. So when you're working on a regular desktop computer and you're wondering why that power supply faces down, it's basically a vacuum cleaner. It's sucking air into the power supply, and in the back of the computer, where your plug plugs into the power supply, that air that it's sucking in goes out the back. It never enters your computer, never. That's why I get so upset about people so obsessed with their computer case airflow that has nothing to do with their power supply. And in the meantime, a lot of cases have filters underneath the power supply that users never clean. And while they're looking at CPU and GPU temps and benchmark numbers, they're suffocating their power supply in blissful ignorance. Well, these fans work in a very similar way. These fans are going to draw air in from the bottom. And this is why if you set a laptop on your lap or you put it on the bed with you, it sits on the sheets and it's suffocating these fans. They cannot breathe. The air is drawn in from the bottom and it is evacuated or exhausted through these vents here. So bearing that in mind, if we turn this around and take another look at these fans, we can then determine that as this fan rotates, it is drawing air up from under the laptop through this heatsink and out the back. So how does the fan and the heatsink attach? With a piece of tape. And where do you get buildup? If this fan is a vacuum cleaner sucking up all the lint and pet hair on everything you put this laptop on, where does that lint and pet hair go? It can't fit through the blades of the cooler, of the heatsink. And, well, it can get wrapped around the fan. These kind of fans typically are immune from that. Instead, they just kick it into this little space. So this whole top of the metal here is where the air is coming out of the fan. Or if you can imagine this long, narrow opening that's blowing air out. And it's blowing it into this separate piece that's a metal heatsink. And then there's this tape that keeps the air kind of in there, but it also keeps all the debris in there. It's a terrible, terrible design. This is why your laptop's running hot. This is why you're getting high temps. It has nothing to do with your thermal compound. So again, when we ritualize things and we don't understand the engineering behind what these things do and where they are typically being hindered, then it results in a misunderstanding that somebody says, well, we're in here. This is the justification. Well, we're in here, let's just change the thermal paste because we're trying to fix a cooling issue. But it's typically a waste of time and money. And as you can imagine, we have to break this laptop down to get the circuit board out, to flip it to the other side, to get to the heat sinks, upon which we can then change the thermal compound. It is a ton of work, inviting a huge opportunity for you to damage or lose a screw or put something back incorrectly where it doesn't close up correctly. If you know what you're doing and you're very confident in your technical skill, there's nothing I have to teach you. But if you're a regular viewer wondering how you can improve your computer, leave it alone. And if you're having any problems with your computer that concern you, reach out to our community, reach out to us personally, give us a description of the problem and when it started, and let us at least help guide you to a proper solution. It'll be pretty rare that we ever tell you the proper solution is to change the thermal compound. Maybe once every 20 years, that will be a solution, but it's very, very uncommon. Now, if you're overclocking or overvolting your chip, all bets are off. You're on your own. But if you're running the system as it's designed to be run, you're most likely having clogs in the heatsink or the fan that's causing all of any noise from fans being very loud or cooling issues. That's just the reality of it. It may not be what you want to hear, but it's definitely not what you typically hear from a content channel or a tech content channel. Let me just take a breath that we got this far and take a look here in the chat. See if I've missed any such questions. And if you have asked a question that I haven't read aloud, I probably haven't seen it. Please do ask it again now as I'm taking a little break here to kind of gather myself and look at this mess I've created, just trying to change a stupid battery. By the way, the new batteries aren't going to last any longer. Another 3-4 years, you're back to having to replace it again. So why they made this so difficult to get at, it's insulting. It's offensive to me. It'd be like
welding the lug nuts onto your wheels of your car. Like, you know, I have to change the tires at some point, right? That's just insulting to me that you would weld on lug nuts. You know the brakes won't last forever. I'm going to have to take the wheels off to get to the brakes. Why would you make this so difficult to get at when it's a consumable part? You understand what I mean, consumable? It means it's going to wear out, it's intended to wear out, and it's going to need to be replaced. If I can't change the tires on my car because the lug nuts are welded on, I have to buy a new car simply because the tires, regardless of how much I've driven the car, the rubber will get dry. Here in Arizona, when a tire reaches about 6 or 7 years old, if it's been out in the desert heat, it'll just crack and break apart, even if you have a lot of tread on it. Some people might drive their car around on the metal belts that are underneath the rubber. They've worn the rubber down that far, which means they're getting very bad traction, terrible ride quality, and their stopping distance is probably tripled of what it would be with a nice set of tires. You know, especially if you're driving in rain or snow or gravel. So parts that are consumable should be easily changeable, reasonably. They've put this battery in like it's never ever going to go bad and it's never going to wear out. Now, these fans, well, they are a moving part, will likely never wear out, at least not in the lifespan of this laptop, maybe in 30 years. On average, there's always exceptions. And the circuit board, well, that'll last forever. When I say forever, I mean up until the end of our lives. The circuit board will long outlive us, generally speaking, with exceptions. And so to make this difficult to replace makes sense. You shouldn't have to get in there. But you will have to change your battery. Absolutely. Why would they make it this process? Is bad design. Now, you can come up with your conspiracy theories. They want you to buy a new one. They're going to charge you all this money. Blah, blah, blah. And the companies I've worked for when designing product, it's usually about the cost of production more so than how easy it is to work on. How can we evacuate all the heat from something this high power and at the same time give it a big enough battery for this big of a screen? And how do we assemble all that efficiently in an assembly line? And how do we use parts that don't cost a lot of money to manufacture? And how do we put it all together in the most attractive package? Oh, how serviceable is it? It really doesn't come to mind for a lot of manufacturers. Just buy a Mercedes. If you've ever worked on a Mercedes, Audi is another one. A lot of the German manufacturers, it's about the package. It's not about the maintenance or service. And you go, well, you know, a 5-minute job on a Chevy is a 5-hour job on an Audi. You know, you got to take the whole front of the engine apart to get to a water pump and take the timing cover off. Why would you design it that way? They weren't thinking of service when they designed it. They were trying to build the best engine they could under any circumstance with the most amount of horsepower in the most comfortable and most attractive car at a certain price point. It wasn't built to be serviced. That's the best way I can explain it. Not all manufacturers have that attitude. Like the framework laptops are built first and foremost to be serviced. But the sacrifice of that is you end up with a bigger, heavier laptop. And at this point, as far as I know, only Framework makes any parts. So you're going to pay whatever price they want for it. If it's an adopted standard that other manufacturers can offer their own products for, now we're talking. And that's where we're at with desktop PCs. You put whatever motherboard, whatever cooler, whatever CPU, whatever power supply, whatever case, whatever NVMe, whatever RAM. But the minute you start condensing everything down and compressing it into a little package, that's where attitudes go two different ways in manufacturers for serviceability versus size, weight, power, price, aesthetics. This is an aesthetic design, not a service design. It doesn't make them evil. That's just what their goal was. These were the instructions the engineers were given in designing this, right? These
The serviceability wasn't probably on the list at all, except maybe this panel right here to get. They did think about serviceability in the sense of RAM, Wi-Fi card, and NVMe drive and storage, right? But nothing with regard to battery, which I don't know. It seems like they couldn't make up their mind. Did you want it to be serviceable or didn't you? Trust me, there's some management and accounting that makes this all make sense. Luke Greenia says laptop teardowns can be frustrating, but not always. Sometimes they're very simple. We've certainly seen enough laptops here. You just pop them open, and that Ace Magic AX16 laptop, it's just a few screws. There's no clips. There's your battery, there's your RAM, there's your storage. Everything's easily upgradable, easily accessible. There's not 24 screws to take out. There's only like 6 or 8. There's no clips to worry about breaking. And that's a discounted budget laptop. Paul Howe says that type of connector that I thought should have like a raising lid. He goes, no, those do slide out. He's seen them before. I'm just being overly cautious because of my lack of familiarity. New to me. That's not normally the way cables in my world go in. And in fact, that's not normally the way other cables in this laptop go in. That one's different. Weird. I think it's weird. So it didn't feel right. So being extra cautious because of my lack of familiarity. But I also want to share that genuine anxiety and stick-to-itiveness in understanding, because where you're going to get in trouble if you're not familiar with doing the, a new machine I've never worked on before, or a different machine I've ever worked on, patience. Patience is your best ally in being successful in an unfamiliar job. And it's repetition that makes you efficient. But if you try to be efficient the very first time you do it, you're probably going to disappoint yourself every single time. Now, some people might say, if you're making videos teaching people how to do things, shouldn't you be better prepared? Well, I am prepared here to say with confidence, bring on a challenge and surprise me. Because anybody can write a script and anybody can edit a video. And we can give you the impression of how easy this is or how difficult this is and how we edit it. But when we film in real time, without edits and without a script, this is more similar to a real life experience that we can now share together without me controlling it. It is what it is. But I have the confidence that whatever I'm about to encounter here is something I may not have seen that design before, but I understand the function. And it might take a second for that to click, right? But oh, now this relates to something else in my past. If this is a laptop like parts people that do nothing but Dells, they probably see very similar connectors every day, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 12 months a year. It's nothing for them because they're familiar. So how do you get familiar without doing it? And the best way that I can think of is to invite you to join me in my experience. This is a first-time experience for me, and I'm hoping is a first-time experience for you. And the only difference between you and I is I have over 30 years of experience overall in general over PCs and laptops. So I'm applying my previous knowledge and adapting it and flexing it to so that I can understand this. It's not a complete puzzle. I have a foundation on which I'm building on, and then I can share that critical thinking, reverse engineering thought with you so as to hopefully teach you the same conclusions at the same time I'm realizing them. Sometimes my conclusions are wrong, and we also come to that conclusion together
typically at the same time. Or sometimes somebody leaves a comment 3 weeks after the video and says, you missed this or you missed that, or you could have done this or could have done that. Okay for next time, but guess what? There's probably never going to be a next time. The next time it'll be a different model of laptop from another manufacturer. That is this type of work. This is field service work. On the other hand, maybe another laptop like this rolls in next week. I don't know who's going to call next. It's never happened before. I've never seen one. Sometimes when it rains, it pours, and we'll certainly have much better expectations and can be more efficient the second time. And if there's a third time or a fourth time, we'll just keep getting better and better. It's like learning how to play a piano or learning any skill. You have to keep repeating it, and you have to allow yourself time and patience if you want to do it yourself, or just hire somebody. But ideally, the person you hire would be more like parts people for something like this, who wouldn't struggle with it the way I just did. That would be preferred, right? Because in that way, they're going to be faster than me. On the other hand, it may be something you want to take on yourself, but I want you to understand what's involved. My browser just crashed because YouTube or Google has a memory leak in Chrome, and it only happens in live chat. Let me look through I've been biding my time here to give you guys time to ask your questions. I want to remind you again, if you have a question, absolutely feel free to ask it now in the chat room, and I'll do my best to provide an answer or point you to a link that will guide you to the answer you're looking for. And also, we have a very knowledgeable and friendly community here that might know the answer to your question as well. But don't dismiss that, because a lot of times their answers are better than mine. Why revive old tech that will no longer meet Windows 11 requirements? It looks like a waste of resources. Well, you know, why live your life if you're just going to die? You're going to die anyway, so why not just die today? Windows 10 is not dead. Windows 10 won't die until October 14th of 2025. And by die, it's end of life, all right? It's their end of life. Microsoft said they're going to allow, and they've never done this before, they said they're going to allow individuals to extend the support on Windows 10 for $30 for 1 year. That means if Mara wanted to keep this laptop on Windows 10, and Microsoft isn't lying, and they actually follow through, because when Microsoft was asked, how are you going to charge that $30 a year and implement who can and cannot get updates? And they're just security updates, not feature updates. There'll be no more features added to Windows 10. Microsoft has said, we'll give you that answer when we get closer to the date. So that's October. So we're in, let me do the math with you. We're in January. We've had this anxiety that the end is near, the end is near. You better get to Windows 10 for the last 4 years, and I'm about sick of it, honestly. I don't understand. I don't understand. There's no rush. We've got February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. You can be pregnant today and have your baby before Windows 10 is expired. That's an entire human life being formed from nothing but a sperm and egg to an actual living creature here joining us on the planet. That's how much time you've got. But why bother? That attitude really bothers me, because it's not realistic. We all just can't throw money at things in anticipation of what's going to happen 9 months from now. If you live in that world, congratulations. Maybe someday I'll get there myself. However, if this machine were a Windows XP machine or a Windows 7 machine, then I would agree with you. There's no point in it. It's a waste of time. But this machine is not dead yet. It reminds me of the Monty Python skit. I've got a dead body for you. I'm not dead. Well, he says he's not dead. Well, he will be soon. He's very ill. But I'm feeling better. No, you're not. You'll be stone dead in a moment. Come on, do me a favor. Take the body. This guy's like, I'm happy. I think I'm going to go for a walk. This will never be Windows 11 compatible, nor will Microsoft ever support Windows 11 on this. If there are ways to bypass through registry entries or other ways the security settings, Microsoft has made it very clear that if you follow those instructions, you are on your own, and Microsoft does not provide you with any guarantee of support or any future updates if you bypass those requirements. So Microsoft may have a technical document that says, if you bypass these requirements, you can get Windows 11 on it. But before Microsoft says that, in giant writing, it says, you should absolutely not do this, and if you choose to do it, we will not support you, ever. Microsoft has doubled down that they will not back off of Windows 11 requirements, and anyone foolish enough to circumvent those security requirements will suffer their own fate and will not hold Microsoft responsible for what happens. But if you want to do it, these are the steps. It is a technical document, not intended for consumer use. But if you want to drive around, you know those rails that come down when the train's coming? I see cars drive around those here in Phoenix. You've got to be a complete moron, in my opinion, to outrun that train. Those barriers came down for a reason. And just because you can drive around them doesn't mean you should. And if you do, it's on you. So I don't take this lightly because I have a career resting on it. If you have a computer that is not Windows 11 compliant, you're better off running Windows 10 on it. Windows 10, even after its end of life, is going to keep you more secure than Windows 11 will if you had to bypass the security requirements of Windows 11 to get it on there. You are now less secure. Congratulations. You've outsmarted Microsoft by making yourself more vulnerable than if you just left Windows 10 on it without support. This is what I talk about ritualizing versus having the technical knowledge to understand why. Why? What is Windows 11 doing that requires those technicalities, right? Those requirements for TPM. That lack of knowledge doesn't mean it's okay to bypass it. It means you don't understand it. And if you don't understand it, you don't respect it. And if you don't respect it and you want to do that to yourself, knock yourself out. If I did that, I would likely be sued eventually because it's going to be something that I was paid to do that caused eventual damages to my customer, who will then come after me for those costs. And I just don't have the luxury a home user has to be irresponsible. But you do. You've been warned. Choose whatever you want to do, man. Some people like to smoke cigarettes, you know. All the power to them. If that's what you want to do, light up. That's how you want to spend your money? I don't know what else to say. Well, the store sells the cigarettes. Yeah, they do. And you're a fool if you buy them. But that's my opinion. And I think if you ask most smokers, are you a fool for buying those? They'll probably agree with me. Owen Garrity says, hello from Scotland. As a now retired techie, if there is such a thing. Yeah, right? I just wanted to say I enjoy watching your videos. Well, thank you, Owen. Andy Kane said he got a laptop to clean out and the dust was so much it created a sponge in the heatsink. Yeah, it's like cleaning the lint filter out of a clothes dryer. It's very similar to that, or it can be. FM Lazar says, as bad as this is, changing the batteries on a Mac laptop is even worse. I wouldn't know, but I'm not surprised.
Someone in the chat whose name I can't make out says, it seems like this Alienware R3 Klipsch model is rare. A lucky owner indeed. This is owned by Mara. I'm pretty sure she was well aware of what she bought. She's a pretty technical person, especially for a girl. In many ways, she's a lot more technical than I am. She may have, and I think it would be a mistake to assume that she stumbled on it by mistake. She may have sought this specific model out when she purchased it, but either way. Someone's listening on a delay. ERHA1234 with a $10 super chat says, I built one of your computers with a Gigabyte V560 HD3. Good board. Following step by step 2.5 years ago. It still runs fast and it's super quiet. Thank you. Hey, that's awesome. Thank you for your super chat contribution and for letting me know that I've helped you. If you don't tell me, how would I know? I have no doubt that machine is going to run at least another 6 to 8 years without any issues. So you pick good parts, you build it correctly, and you're just going to have a much better machine overall for a better price than just having something pre-built, and you're experiencing that now. And verifying what I've been saying the whole time. Experience trumps anything you read or see online. And it's certainly nice vindication when somebody says, hey, I have the experience now and did what you did and I got the same results you got. Yeah, it's really simple. But that doesn't mean people believe me or people listen or people refuse, like they talk themselves out of it and they refuse themselves the experience. You know, I've done that before, it's a waste of time, or it's not that big of a difference. It's a massive difference. But you wouldn't know if you didn't do it. So thank you for letting me know. David Martinez joins us and says hello. Welcome in, David. Luke says this laptop looks pretty clean for 9-year-old tech. You know, it does actually, doesn't it? It just bothers me that I can't see what's going on between the fan and heatsink, because that's usually where the gooch is. The gooch. Does that just lift out? No. So that's all part of the heat pipes. You know what? I wonder if we can take these fans out. Usually there's 3 screws that hold these. These are pretty standard fans. They're used in mini PCs and laptops. And usually, you know, once you're this far in, there's nothing to take out. Let me see if I'm going to regret this. I'm a glutton for punishment today. So there's 2 screws. There's usually a third one. 1, 2. And then there's a piece of tape that the exhaust port of the Death Star. If you get a photon torpedo, is it photons? Is that Star Trek? Shame on me. Terrible fan. Right down the exhaust shaft, you could just blow the whole thing up. Well, the exhaust port on this fan is right here. And this is typically where all your buildup's going to be. It's going to be right, well, maybe not in the fan itself, although sometimes, but right here against the heatsink. And the best way, instead of taking the heatsink off and reapplying your thermal paste, we just get a little air gun. And I use these, so you get these on Amazon. Now my air gun's dusty. I need an air gun to blow off my air gun. This one has a carbon brush. What I don't like about a lot of these is they'll just have like a plastic tube. Touching plastic against your circuit board can initiate a static shock. It's not a good idea. You generally do not want to make contact with your electronic parts with plastic. On the other hand, having a carbon brush encourages us that we can brush this and not worry about an electrostatic discharge. And what I want to do, I've got a heatsink on each side, and I want to be careful not to blow the screws off the table. But attaching the carbon brush, I can get right up against this heatsink. And I do want to probably move these screws for the fan right over here behind this little cardboard wall that is our replacement battery. Move that back there. Move this over here. All right, now I shouldn't blow anything away. You can also get the vents at the bottom underneath the fan, right? Because this is where it's sucking air in. This can get plugged up. This one looks really clean. We'll bring it over to the edge of the table. We'll blow straight through. Did you see stuff come out? I did. And it's important we hit the heatsink from the other side, because remember, air's all traveling one way out that heatsink. And if you think about the way water flows, as it flows a certain direction, things may start to wear in a certain way. And much like if you think about a round capacitor, and let's say the whole capacitor's got dust on it, and we blow this side of the capacitor off, all the dust on the other side is untouched. It's like hiding behind a tree, and the wind is blowing around you. So then you got to come around to the other side of the tree and make sure the wind blows that way. So we're going to go this way. I put my hand in front because I want to make sure I can feel the air moving through the heatsink effortlessly, that there's no dead spots where I run my hand along the heatsink and air, no air. And then I can tell without even looking at it, just by feel, that there's a blockage in there. And that's very easy, right? And we'll do the same thing over on this side, but it does look amazingly clean. I am impressed. Mara obviously takes good care of where she's setting the laptop when it's running, because all you have to do is set it on a blanket or anything that has lint, or keep it near pets and things of that nature. The only other thing I would do is maybe just blow the fan out while we've got it out here. And again, I would do that for both sides. If you need to replace a fan, I would recommend you take out what you've got. There's going to be a part number on it. You can go anywhere from eBay to just a Google search to find replacement fans. A lot of times they're not available overnight, so do plan accordingly. That, you know, a lot of times these ship from China. It could take 2 or 3 weeks. And that's normal. That's a normal thing in this industry. Ordinarily, I don't deal with a piece like this. Usually the fans don't have a piece that long, and so I'm having a little bit of a struggle figuring out how that goes back under there, because it's not sitting. Oh, now it goes in perfect. Okay. Just have to move it up a little bit, and then that should, when it's aligned correctly, there's a little pin that the fan sits down on, and that ensures that you've got it lined up, and we can push the tape back down, and then we can put those 2 screws back in before I lose them, and repeat that over here. So again, if you do have questions for me, I'm going to get back to the chat here in just one moment. Just let me put these screws back. This heatsink looks like it's pretty well closed off on the top. Sometimes you can see through the tops of them. And since we're in here and it's not costing us any money, just with the carbon brush, we can just kind of get into the grooves. You can also use a toothbrush as long as you're not touching anything electronic. This is just an aluminum heatsink, so it's like brushing a can of soda. You're not hurting anything. It's probably not doing much to help. Makes me feel good, I suppose. Let me take another look here in the chat. Henry Hansen says flash storage is not considered good for long-term storage. Prove it. Get a flash drive. This is a very simple thing. Get a flash drive of your choosing. Put anything you want on it. And then come back and show us when your data disappears. It will not happen in your lifetime. But if you can make that happen, see, people have all these anxieties. And I guarantee you have no personal experience because it's not a thing. This exists only in theoretics. The issue is, well, it's true, eventually data will vanish. You will likely perish before that happens. Prove me wrong. With your own work. Don't show me anybody else's work. I want to see you demonstrate data vanishing off a flash drive. And if that data is important to you, you should have it in more than one place anyway. If you're not willing to do that, then you should not be spreading false information simply because you believe it. I need evidence. And if you can't provide that evidence, you're just talking nonsense. I'm sorry there's so much bad information online. I don't know what to do about it. But I want to empower you to think for yourselves and not be sheep. Look for evidence. Find me proof. It doesn't exist. It's just theoretical. But people, I'll tell you what, if I could sell snake oil, I'd be a rich man today, as gullible as people are. So I'm having a little difficulty here. It seems like this tape doesn't want to sit all the way back down the way it used to. And I guess that'll be okay. It's just, you know, we're breaking the seal here. Oh. So, well, this fan is easily, you can get to the screws that hold the fan in. On this one, I can't. But based on how clean it is, I don't think it's necessary anyway. I don't think I needed to take the fan out. The circuit board would have to come out because the circuit board's covering up the mounting, the screws that mount the fan. But I think if we just go like, you know, I don't want to blow my screws away. Let's aim it this way. Here's the thing, if we had a lot of lint and hair on this side, I would definitely be taking off this side. But as clean as this was, this one is probably equally clean, but I'm still gonna blow through anything because we did get a little bit of something that came up. And I'm gonna go into the exhaust here and blow out the other way because that's not usually the airflow movement. So we wanna go the other way just to loosen any debris and encourage that to come out the top of the fan or out the bottom of the machine. And again, we want to go at the input area, the intake here, and we want to make sure that these vents are nice and clear as well. Now, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to realize you don't have to take your laptop apart to do this. Unless you have an extraordinary buildup of like hair that's wound in there. The vents that exist on the laptop to intake and exhaust air are the same vents you will use to force air through each side and blow out and force out any debris or buildup, negating any necessity to open it up and take it out. This is true also of power supplies. You don't have to open up your computer to clean your power supply. You simply need to turn your computer onto its side to access the bottom of the power supply and blow air through it, clean your filter, and then come around the exhaust part, which is the back of the computer, where your power plug plugs in, unplug it, obviously, and blow the dust out back the other way. Do that a couple of times until it seems pretty clean. You never had to turn a screwdriver. This is true of laptops. You don't have to open a laptop up to do this. Only in extreme cases where you cannot blow the gunk out, like it's all stuck together. At that point, you need to open it up and get some tweezers or something and pull out the gooch. It depends how bad it is. But this is a good place to start because it's easy and it doesn't risk damaging anything. Less invasive, I guess is the word I'm looking for. All right, let's take a quick look here in the chat, see what everybody's talking about. Andy Kane says fair play for blowing out the fans. They look clean. I'm really surprised. I wasn't expecting them to be that clean. Will Windows 12 come out? I'm sure eventually a new version of Windows will come out. I don't know if it'll be called Windows 12. Microsoft is in a very competitive industry, and they don't want to announce anything that isn't nearly ready for release for fear that Android or Apple or some other competitor will beat them to their innovation. As of this point, there are no betas of any new operating systems from Microsoft. And there will be a beta of anything new about a year before it's publicly released. So if you have to ask, the answer is no. It'll be very obvious in all you read about online well, I have no doubt Microsoft, behind closed doors, strictly confidential with employees, is working on a new operating system. I don't know how far along it is. I don't know when it will be ready for beta testing, but when it is ready for beta testing, it'll be all over the news. It's all everybody's going to talk about, and it'll be another year after that before you will be offered it as a product to buy, approximately. That is always the process. At this point, Microsoft's official word is no, there is no Windows 12. We're not working on a Windows 12, and we have no plans on releasing a Windows 12. But what's really happening, they won't tell you because they don't want any of their competitors to steal their ideas, and then their shareholders are going to get really pissed off and de-invest the company, or divest the company. And that way, you've got to play your cards like a poker game. Microsoft is deny, deny, deny. When we're ready to make an announcement, it'll still be a year before you see anything. Because no announcement has been made, there's nothing worth discussing at this point, let alone what the name will be. The name is decided by a marketing company, not by the engineers and not by product managers. That is strictly marketing. So whether it's called Windows 12 or Windows Circle of Life, or maybe they don't even use the word Windows. Windows is not a term an engineer came up with. The term Windows was come up with by a marketing company who said, hey, when you open those programs, it makes little windows. We should call the program Windows. And all the engineers and all the developers at Microsoft said, well, you're the marketing company. I guess we call it Windows. The name comes last. It's like an author who's got the title of the book and the cover of the book, but they haven't written any of the book. Usually you have to write the book first, and then based on the content of the book, the cover will have something to do with that, not the other way around. There's no rule that says you have to do it that way, but that's typically how it's done. So no, there's no Windows 12. If that changes, we'll let you know. as I'm sure everybody else on the internet will too. CareyHolzman says he bought the Orico 2 terabyte NVMe SSD. You know, Mitch did as well. It's overheating and thermally throttling. The company provided a refund. I'm not sure what's going on, but the company did say they run hot. Did you put a heatsink on it? I mean, it's a Gen 4 high-speed drive, and it's not sold with the heatsink. So when I'm putting NVMe drives on motherboards, you'll always notice I'm using the included heatsink on the motherboard. They're far better than any heatsinks that come with an NVMe drive, and they do sell NVMe drives for more money, like the Samsung 980 Pro we used the other day has a heatsink on it. And the reason I use that, we used it on the Minis forum board that doesn't have any heatsinks on the NVMe's. Now, if I put in a lower performance NVMe drive, then I wouldn't have needed the heatsink. So our friend Mitch Morrison, he bought one of those. And when we install it, or he might even do that on his own, he'll be absolutely using a motherboard heatsink on that. And I don't anticipate he'll have any overheating problems. If I had to guess, I have to assume you did not put a heatsink on it. And that's true of all high-performance Gen 4 drives. There's nothing unique about the Orico in that sense. I have very limited experience with it, so if over time I learn differently, I'll let you know, but I appreciate you sharing your story with us. Raj wants to know, since I had to lift the tape up on the fans, would it be an idea to put Captain tape to tape it down? Sometimes, in my opinion, people go over the top worrying about little details that have no real impact or measurable impact that makes a difference one way or the other with regards to technical minutia versus ordinary practical knowledge. If that's something you want to do, I don't think it'll hurt. Is it something necessary? Absolutely not. If it were, I'd be doing it. So at the end of the day, you're going to work to what you feel is acceptable, and I'm going to work to my level. If somebody is working for me, they're working to my level. I don't want them doing their best. I want them doing my best. But if I'm not doing your work, and I'm not responsible for the work you do because you're not doing it under my name or my company's name, you're free to do it in whatever way makes you feel good. I don't believe it's necessary. However, you might feel otherwise. So there's no absolute here. We're not dealing with an airtight system. It's not a submarine. So I appreciate the question, but I think you're overthinking it. But if it makes you feel better to tape it back down, you know, that probably won't hurt anything either. CareyHolzman said, yes, I included the heatsink. So when you say the heatsink, I don't know what that means. Like, give me an example of how you use the drive. Did you put it into a laptop, or did you put it into a mini PC, or did you put it into a regular desktop motherboard? And given that information, what is the heatsink? I don't understand. Something Orico included, something your motherboard included, something you bought third party. Think about it like this, and I want you to just use common sense. If every single drive Orico sold fails due to heat, how does Orico stay in business? What's the plan here? We're just going to close up shop and run to Mexico with our thousands of dollars? It's not $1 million. They're not selling, you know, it's not likely. The goal here isn't to rip you off. The goal here is to keep you a happy customer so you'll buy more and you'll refer. Any legitimate business wants to stay in business. It's not I'm going to drive into town, sell you my snake oil, and then I'm going to get back in the car and drive to the next town and you're never going to see me again. So whether or not you had a defective product, whether you didn't install it correctly or inappropriately for the scenario it was being used in, may be a user-related problem. In my experience in this industry, I fix more user-related misunderstandings than actual part failures that are warranted or defect in workmanship or materials. That doesn't mean that's you. I'm just saying, when I get calls for service, the vast majority of them are caused by the user's misunderstanding. That's it. It doesn't mean they're dumb, and it doesn't mean that a lot of times what I've found, and you take this for whatever it's worth, people who feel technically competent when something goes wrong blame the tech. And people who feel intimidated by the technology, when something goes wrong, their immediate thing is, what did I do? And in my experience, in this industry, those roles need to be reversed, because the people who are intimidated by the tech when they experience a problem, in most cases, never did anything wrong. And the people who are very technically competent, who then blame the tech when something goes wrong, it's usually their fundamental misunderstanding of the tech, and they did not apply it correctly. And it would sure be nice if those roles would switch for me as a tech when I get the calls, because I can be better prepared for what I'm about to handle. When somebody tells me, look, I'm not very good with computers, I don't know what I screwed up, almost always they did nothing wrong. Almost always. And yet when somebody calls me and says, I do this myself all the time, so clearly there's something wrong, and then we get into an argument because they got their pride is in it. And I've gone through this so many times, and I'm telling you this motherboard's bad. I'm like, it's not bad. It is bad. I'm like, what, you're calling me an idiot? I'm not calling you an idiot. I'm just saying you've done something incorrectly. Carey, I've been doing this for 15 years, and you telling me I'm doing something incorrectly is insulting to me. And I go, let's stop talking about it. Bring it here and show it to me. And brings it here, shows it to me. I go, click, click, click. There it is. And they go, I can't believe it. I know. I'm not saying I know everything, and I'm not saying it's always going to be that way, but it happens so often. I'm just a little worn out, man. I'm like, can I have a little variety in life, or do we have to keep repeating everything? So, you know, I don't know if you got a bad unit. I don't know how you installed it, but what I do know is you can't sustain a business selling product that overheats. That just doesn't make any sense. So something's off. And the reason I ask you these questions is to help guide you to what likely the problem was. It wasn't likely the drive. But I don't have that much time with the drive either. But if it's like everybody else that's a respectable manufacturer, unless there's a defect in it, something wasn't done correctly. I don't know what else to say. It's not normal. So, oh, stay away from that brand. No, that brand wouldn't be in business anymore. Why in the world would anybody want to shut their business down just to make a couple of bucks? Like, maybe if there's millions of dollars, but for that, not worth it. FM Lazar said he bought 2 of the NVMe thick-watt NVMe drives that had included heatsinks, and I use the ones provided with the motherboard, and they run fine. So that's another brand I don't have a lot of experience with. Thick-watt, we've got 2 of them. They're fine. They're not like the Beijing drives where I've got, what do I have, 3 dozen of those out in the wild. Never seen one go bad, never had heat problems. I'm very happy with them. The thick-watt drives I bought just to experiment, but I haven't had a lot of time with them. And the Orico drives I haven't had a lot of time with, but I can't tell them apart. Whether it's heat or performance, they're all identical. So for all I know, and for all you know, they're all made in the same factory, and all they're doing is slapping a different name on it. I learned this lesson a long time ago when and those of you who've heard the story, bear with me. I had a very bad experience with a particular kitchen appliance. And I said, I will never ever buy Whirlpool ever again. Just the worst manufacturing I've ever seen. Not on multiple appliances, one appliance. And when I went to the store to buy a new appliance, and the salesman said, "What can I help you find?" I said, "Anything as long as it's not made by Whirlpool." Right? And I'm looking, and then like, well, you've got Kenmore, and you've got GE, and you've got Samsung and LG, et cetera, et cetera. And I see this KitchenAid, and I go, "I like this KitchenAid. This looks really well built. It's super sturdy." The guy says, you want the KitchenAid?" I go, "Yeah." "Okay." Sells me the KitchenAid. I have the KitchenAid installed. This was a dishwasher. Best dishwasher I've ever owned. Now I want to buy KitchenAid because I've had a very good experience with it. So next time I go to the appliance store, I'm looking for whatever appliance. And I said, "I got to tell you, I'd like it all to match. And I really like my experience with KitchenAid." And he goes, "You mean Whirlpool?" "No, I never want to own a Whirlpool product. But Whirlpool makes KitchenAid." How do you think I felt in that moment? Like a complete moron. I'm not going to say any more about it. Orico, Beijing, pick what. For all you know, it's all made in the exact same factory. Andy Kane says, "I used my Gigabyte B560M motherboard heatsink for my Beijing S880 with no complaints." Yeah, usually, without exception, motherboard heatsinks are far better than any manufacturer heatsink on an NVMe drive, especially if it's Gen 5. You want to talk about things getting hot. Gen 5 will make Gen 4 look like it's ice cold. What's up?
Finish my laptop.
I'm taking a break. This is exhausting.
My poor laptop.
It's extraordinarily detail-oriented, which to me requires a lot more mental
You're the
effort.
one that wanted to do it.
I know, and I'm enjoying it. Can I sip my wine, or you
No.
want me to chug the Dom Perignon? This is intended to be
It's good coffee.
sipped.
Enjoy it.
Sip it, taste it, savor, simmer.
Good coffee.
Let it simmer.
Enjoy it.
You want to see your baby's guts?
That's what scares me.
What, you have no confidence in me?
I have a lot of confidence. I just don't like it all.
I just don't trust you. I
kept
have
that
confidence
thing
in you.
Pristine condition.
I can't believe how clean it is.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Loved and still love that laptop.
Well, you're going to get it better. You're going to get it back so much better than it's ever been. More memory.
When?
Faster Wi-Fi. Eventually. When's the last time you used this laptop?
Yesterday.
Prior to last week. Did you use it in the month of December?
Yes.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
When?
You want the date?
Give me an example for why you would have taken this laptop out when you have two desktops and you weren't traveling anywhere.
Updating my games.
The games, when's the last time you played a game on this? What game did you play?
Wow.
You played World of Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
Then why are we upgrading this? I'll get you an Etch-a-Sketch. That'll play World of Warcraft.
Ha 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 ha.
You're interrupting my conversation with my guests.
On purpose. Because you're way past your time here.
Are you calling me in for dinner?
No, I'm just saying.
Are you my mother? It's time for your friends to go home now. Let me get the battery out of here. I haven't even checked that we even have the right battery yet.
That's what I'm over here pushing you to do something.
It wouldn't make a difference. It wouldn't make a difference.
Got it all open
If
for
the battery is the incorrect battery and I put an order in now or 6 hours from now, we're still not going to get it for a few days.
So if we have to get the battery,
It won't make a difference in the next few hours.
The details are in your.
Okay. That's what you want to hear, right? Okay.
Action speaks louder than words.
Okay. All right, so I just wanted to scroll through one last time here to see. Hey, there's Barry Klein joining us, says hello. Ron Barnish joins us and says hello. Paul House said he ordered the Minisforum S9 5S7 with the RTX 4060. That is one of my favorite Minisforum. You know, it's the bigger one. And those were just on sale. I think there was $70 off. It was $389, not with the GPU. I think that was bare bones, if I'm not mistaken. It was a great price nonetheless. You'll have to let me know what you think about it, Paul. He says he's expecting it Wednesday. So yeah, I bet you're excited about that. I would be. It's a great little machine, I think you'll agree. But when you have it, you let me know. If there's anything you don't like about it, or you do like about it, either way, share that with me, please. Wow, we have a very engaged chat room today. That's lovely. I love seeing you guys talking with each other. And Greg says he can't see Carey playing Warcraft. Maybe a game of Pong with Mitch. You know what? If a game takes a quarter to play it, I will likely beat your butt at it. Specifically, a space shooter. More specifically, Galaga. But anything that takes a quarter to play it, if it's video game, not pinball. Pinball's not my thing. When you show me a World of Warcraft game that takes a quarter, you let me know. Nick Caffrey says, I'm familiar with the expression Carey just had on his face. Mitch Morrison wants to know, why do bananas wear sunscreen? It's so they don't peel. Oh, these are painful, Mitch. Good to see Mitch joining us in the chat. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Scott says, we feel for you, Mara, having to put up with Carey. Will wants to know if I've seen the stories TP-Link is going to be banned by the US government. Not likely. You know, I think it would do our country, the Western civilized countries, good to have a news holiday. Because the news is so full of gossip and nonsense. The people that we elect here in the United States to represent us, they deal with quite literally dozens, if not hundreds, of bills or propositions every single day, and we elect them as our representatives so we as citizens don't have to deal with that nonsense of running a country. And out of the dozens or hundreds of daily things and decisions and processes they have to investigate or decide on, a few of them go to the news. Very few of what's actually happening is what you know about. The whole issue with TP-Link In my experience as a tech and what I know about people, is a political maneuver regarding tariffs in China. And China's political maneuvers regarding the US, like they don't want to send us stuff for making batteries for cell phones or, you know, things of that nature. And they will use the politics to apply public pressure. If the public behaves and is manipulated the way they want you to be, then they can get you to pour outcry, to be their voice, to push forward pressure against other countries or allies, as the case may be, to go to war, come out of war, to use it as a tool to fuel their agenda. Now that's their agenda, that's not yours or mine. It doesn't actually mean it's justifiable. In the case of TP-Link has done nothing wrong. If you blame TP-Link for the equipment they manufacture being used by hackers to hack people, then you need to accuse the car manufacturers whose drivers kill more pedestrians. So is that Ford's fault? So we should ban Ford. When people talk about here in America, gun control, anytime there's a shooting, certainly a mass shooting, there's a certain part of the country, good half of the country, that's like, this has got to stop. But in the meantime, when they drive a Cybertruck through a crowd or blow up a Cybertruck in front of a building, there's nothing about assault vehicles. There's nothing about banning vehicles. The individuals are to blame, not the tools. TP-Link is a manufacturer of tools. If you're going to blame them, then why don't you blame the internet service provider who provided the data to the hackers? Why don't you blame the data cable communications company that laid the cable under the ocean for allowing the transmission of this nefarious activity? Why don't you blame the electricity company that provided the power, or the computer manufacturer for the computers those bad guys used? At what point do you realize it's not the manufacturer who's responsible for how the tool's being used? It's the person who's got the tools in their hands that needs to be held accountable. I will predict, and I've been wrong before, all of this nonsense about TP-Link is going to blow over because there's no story and TP-Link's done nothing wrong. And you're all going to forget about it in 3 months. I'm going to mention it and you're going to go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Because that's what the news media does here in America, is they will have you so preoccupied with something today, you'll forget about what you were preoccupied about 3 months ago. Everybody was all up in arms with Ace Magic and viruses, and that long problem is long since been resolved, and there's really no follow-up. There's no, oh, everything's better now. Nobody talks about it. We've all moved on to something else. When a movie is opening, it's all anybody talks about. Have you seen Wicked? Have you seen Wicked? In 3 months? When was, oh yeah, forget about that movie, because it's not being constantly presented to you. And then you're reacting exactly the way they want you to. You're being very reactive. And you may choose to be that way. I don't like being manipulated. So when I see that happening, I want to know, what's the real story? What's really happening? TP-Link has 6 of the 10 best routers sold at Amazon, most popular. Anybody that has a TP-Link router, it doesn't affect you at all. It's not like their government's they're gonna take our guns and they're gonna take our router. They're not taking anything. They may prevent, at worst, TP-Link from selling product in the future. Well, here's an example, Deepcool. You used to be able to buy Deepcool products here in the US, and you can't get them anymore. Do you know this? Did you see this in the news? Probably not. Because Deepcool provided parts to a country we have sanctions on, like, for example, the Russian military. The US said, you violated our sanctions. Your product is no longer allowed here in the United States. You are forbidden from selling here because you violated our import agreement. If you're going to provide the Russian military with computer equipment, you will not do business in the United States. You've been warned and you did it anyway. That doesn't mean the products are bad. It doesn't mean deep cool products or terrible products. It doesn't mean that it's imposing any danger on you as a US citizen to own one, or that if you own one, you now have to give it back. So who cares? It's all political nonsense, especially in the case of TP-Link. Or you could look at other companies like Huawei. The whole discussion, it really isn't for this channel, because I'm not a political channel. And these political maneuverings are done to gain pressure and leverage against an agenda for which I, as a technician, have absolutely zero dog in the race on this. It has no impact on me or you. And it's at a level that is much higher than us, that our elected representatives were put in place to deal with, so we don't have to. So in general, I'd say let's worry about what was within our control, and TP-Link's problems are TP-Link's problems, even if they're imaginary. If you think imaginary problems coming from the US government is anything new, you might be new here. Just say it. We've been through this so many times. It just gets a little boring after a while. Oh, this again. Anyway, I don't think it's gonna. It's not like TikTok. This is a whole different thing. Edward said if you use Carey's hourly rate, Mara has already spent $1,000 and waiting for it to be completed. Well, it's a good thing you're not my boss or my customer. Otherwise, we might have a problem. But I guarantee that if you think it's taking too long, you're absolutely welcome to ask for a refund and leave. Doesn't bother me. We like to have friendly, kind individuals joining us, and we enjoy each other's company. I'm not a psychologist billing you by the hour going, well, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you anymore. Your time is up. If you don't enjoy the conversation in the company and you're more concerned about time and money, that's what my business side of my business is for. This side of my business is for relationships, establishing communication and friendships with people around the world while sharing my experience. Not only my experience, but having people share their experience with me is also equally important to me. So we certainly hope that you take advantage of it. If you see no value in it, you're in the wrong place. All right, so with regards to the battery, we can finally see the battery. Sorry, I just needed to take a little break to reset my mind here with all the detail. And by the way, the older I get, it seems like that endurance level is not what it used to be. So when I have a client paying me by the hour, I want to get that client work done as quickly as possible, because I want to help the next client within that working day, and I want to save that client as much money as possible. But when I'm just doing something for the YouTube channel, I really like feeling like we're hanging out with friends. And if a friend ever did that to me and said, well, my hangout time, you've exceeded your hangout time, and if you were billing me like a client, you would owe me this much money, I don't think I'd invite that friend over again. Like, that's what a terrible thing. Anyway, I do appreciate you guys being friends and hanging out with me today, as I just do a little fun work, if you will. This to me isn't work. I'm not answering to anybody. I'm not under a clock. And it changes the dynamic of why I do what I do. Sometimes I do things I don't want to do, but I have to pay the bills. And sometimes I do things I like to do, and I like to just kind of enjoy the ride. I'm not so worried about the destination so much as the ride. Alienware, 92 watt hour. The battery says it's a 63 HDV. Is that what I ordered? I hope so. This was over a week ago. I don't remember. This is similar in shape. Let's see if it's similar in numbers. Alienware. This doesn't say Alienware, a little different. 92 watt hours, 92 watt hours. Connector. Where's the connector? Oh, it's on the other side. Okay, I can't see it. Model number or type. This type says 63 HDV. This says 63. Sorry, it does not say 63. It says 6J HDV. 6J. And our replacement says 6J HDV. We're good. We got the right battery. And it's simply going to sit in there. And you'll see we have a couple of mount points for screws that hold this in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like 7 additional screws need to come out. And this connector. But these speakers run over the battery. You notice there's no battery right here. In between this battery and this battery, there's just a thin piece of plastic. Like this. This is a weird design. Can you imagine if all of this was battery, how much more life you'd get out of this? But they've got a cable going right across the top of the battery to the motherboard here. So there's that cable right there and this cable right here. Now this goes to the left and right speakers, right? This goes to the right speaker is wired to the left speaker. And this other cable here, I think is going to RGB, but I'm not sure. But these cables, they route along the top of the battery. So you can't take the battery out with the cables routed on top of them. So now we have to remove 2 more cables. So this one here and this one here. And that isn't even dealing with the battery cable. These are non-battery related cables that route over the top of the battery to get to where they need to go. So again, Dell did a very bad design here as far as any serviceability goes. That clearly was not a priority for them. We've got this little connector here. And the way that this routes is pretty interesting. It's got a little track that's built into the top of the battery that it fits within. And we'll just set that aside. Now this one here also sits in a little track. It's a completely different kind of connector. And I think we just wiggle that out and you'll see, oh, it's taped. It's got adhesive on the bottom. And we're going to try and reuse that adhesive as much as we can. Now, as for the battery itself, its cable, I think we have to get the battery out first to be able to access it, or we need to access it from the other side. I'm going to just try and remove the battery and see if I can access it after the screws are out. Now, when it comes to these screws, once again, I don't want to mix up all of the screws here, so I'm going to go one here, set it there, one here. I don't know how well you guys are seeing this, but that one here. Then we have one here. So far, all of these screws look the same, but I still want to put them back where they came from. It looks like there was one here for something and here for something, which we have previously removed in getting the top off. So when we put these back, we've got to remember, don't try and put them in these holes. And then we've got one more here. Like so. That there. We've got, do I have anything here? Nothing on this side. Then we go to the center. I'm going to call it the center of the battery here. At the bottom, closest to the edge of the laptop. We'll take that one out. And we'll move that one right about there. Oh, and there's one more right here, right at the very end. None of the screws are directly above and below others, and that makes it a little confusing because it looks like there's a lot more room for additional screws here. But we'll put that one right there. In theory, we should be able to lift out oop, it's just slipped. Where is our cable? Might have to tip it back to get to the cable. Interesting. Where is it? This is the cable here, right? This is the one that says battery. Wasn't it? Or was it this one? Oh, it's this one. Okay, so that goes. How does that come out? Well, we've already disconnected it. The problem is that cable is routed underneath something, and the battery, it wants to, I'm gonna guess, come out like this. Tilt the closest edge to it up and then slide back. I see, and then the cable wraps under. It goes from the end of the battery and wraps under and comes back towards me. So the easiest way to deal with that is after we've lifted it and pulled it towards us, then lift the front and pull it away from you. And there you've got the old battery and we have the new battery. So if I come over here, and I'll show you the two batteries. One is genuine and one's a knockoff. Now, generally speaking, the genuine one has a name brand behind it that is going to care about your customer happiness. And the other one is a cheap Chinese knockoff that just wants to make a sale, and you'll never know who they are and you'll never be able to hold them accountable if your house catches fire. So we have two different motivations between manufacturers. But again, for all we know, it could be the very same company Dell paid to make the battery that made this one. We just don't know. They're very similar, at least on the outside. And let's hope that this is a good battery that'll last a long time. Basically, you got to rely on reviews, or if you don't want to take any risks, buy directly from Dell. Unfortunately, Dell doesn't sell the battery anymore, so in this case, you don't have much luck. Now, on the Dell XPS 13 we've got coming in Tuesday, that will be a Dell battery. Because that customer doesn't want to mess around. They just want to make sure they get it done right. And they're willing to pay a few bucks more for that peace of mind. This is a little bit of a gamble in the sense that we just don't know if this is going to be the same, better, or worse than what we had. There's only one way to know. And of course, the older the laptop is, the more likely you'll find yourself in this position of, trying to locate parts. I just don't want you to be surprised. Be prepared. Where did I take this off from? That one went there. This one went. I need my stronger glasses. It's not usually that difficult to find the connector, but well, some days are better than others. Oh, I see now. There it is. Right there. It actually says speaker right over the connection. Okay, speaker's hooked back up. Whatever this is. Yeah, it says something light. So it's the RGB like I thought it was. And then we can put the screws back. I'll just keep these magnifiers in right now. We've got one that goes here. Wow, that screw turned a long time. And then one goes next to it. And then we skip these two, right? Isn't that what it was? Interesting, this says 15 only, 17 only, meaning if you had the Alienware 15, you'd use that hole, and if you had the Alienware 17, this is for the techs doing the building in the factories. Those are neat little notes, though. I like that. Now, we don't want to plug the battery back in because we want to reassemble everything. If there's probably some charge on this battery from the factory, it's possible we could inadvertently turn the machine on while we're working on it. So you're going to save that as the last thing we reconnect before the back goes back up. Did that come out from there? Or did it come out from here? I think it came out from... Wasn't it this one? And then this one should go at the very end right here. I think that's how I took it apart. When putting the screws back, I have a number of holes. There's one here that would take a screw. So will this one. So will this one and this one. I remember I said to skip these two. I'm trying to remember if I took it from here or did I take it from wherever I just see there's a screw. There's a point here where a screw goes. And I know I put 3 down here. 1, 2, there's one in the middle. I thought it was right here. Well, thank goodness I videotaped myself and I can go back and see where I put it. What an odd way to install a battery. Oh, I see. I put it right here. You know what? I don't think it goes there. That's not the battery. It has to go here. See how easy it is to... If you're not paying really close attention, I think this one went right here. And you know, look, if you've only got a couple of screws, that's easy. But when you're dealing with, you know, there were what, 24, I think I said there. Wait, this doesn't feel right either. That's not going in straight. But I feel like that's where it should go. And I think the battery just isn't sitting exactly right. So it kind of struggled a little bit. But I think I have it right. So what ends up happening is if you put the screw in the wrong place, it tightens down fine. You're not ripping the threads or anything. It's just that when you go to put the cover on, if one of these holes, and I guarantee you several of the holes that are left over are there to secure the bottom plate. When you go to put the screw into the bottom plate, it's going to hit the top of the other screw that you put in the wrong place, and you're not going to get anywhere. So you can take it all back apart again, move the screw to the appropriate place. So it's very important you take your time and focus. And that's why this is taking me so long, is it's hard for me to really concentrate on this while at the same time worrying about the camera and interacting with the audience. On the other hand, I enjoy all of it. So I'm trying to just dabble a little bit in all three versus making a how-to video on behalf of Dell that they're not paying me to make. So understand my motivation behind making these videos. I could just as easily do this on Sunday with the camera off and have it already done, but that's not what I want to do. So some people are just a little confused by that. Now, our battery cable should be sticking out down here, and it is. It's beautiful. And which one's our battery cable? I'm guessing it's this one. Yeah, this is our battery cable. And again, I won't swap that out or plug it back in is what I mean to say, until after we've already changed out whatever we want to change out with regards to RAM and storage. You don't want to do that with the battery attached. It's a great way to cause an unintentional static discharge from the voltage that's happening. It's a short, basically, more than a static discharge from the voltage that maintains the system from the battery whenever it's plugged in, even if it's turned off. And when I say plugged in, I'm talking about the battery being plugged into the motherboard. Then it's a whole nother issue when you've got the whole power supply connected to the board. There's even a better chance for problems to go wrong because at least the battery is limited in its voltage capacity, whereas you could short out your whole battery pack and then things get real expensive. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up for today because quite frankly, I'm a little exhausted. I've kind of had enough of the level of focus this takes. And, you know, for these videos to go 2, 3, 4 parts, it really emphasizes what you should be prepared for, whether you think this is a big deal or not. I have to show you. And
There are screws stuck on the screen.
A screw? Oh, there's a magnet right there. Why is there a magnet in your screen? Look at that.
Popped up for a reason.
There's a magnet right here. It's not down here. What does that magnet do?
There were attachments.
That's why it was what?
There are attachments.
Oh, it was over $3,000? Is that what you
Over
said?
$3,000.
Yeah, right there. There's a magnet right there.
Correct.
Where did that screw come from?
Probably on your pile of.
Not from here. These are untouched. It had to be one of these. There must be 4 that I took out and set here.
Correct.
It would be weird for there to be 3. And if it was there, it makes sense when I lowered the lid.
Correct.
Why is there a magnet there, though?
Docking station.
It's nowhere else.
No. Docking.
It's weird. That is so
I bought it for a
Alienware.
It's for primarily my charity events and land gaming.
Am I your charity event now?
You're never a charity. You're just a choice.
A bad one.
You're the ultimate choice.
Yeah. Guess it's behind the sticker.
Yes.
can't mind it now.
Enough with the magnet. Just keep moving forward.
I'm fascinated by this. That's the. Usually, you don't want magnets around your screen. It can create. There it is. So it's over there by the sticker's ear. That's hilarious. Thank you for noticing that. I don't know how long it would have taken me to notice that. What a bizarre. That's a first time for everything, I suppose. All right, so with that, it would have been nice if some other YouTube channel told me there was a magnet there. Reassembly is reverse of disassembly. We just put it all back together. We'll switch the wireless card out. We'll switch the RAM out, and we'll add the 2 NVMe drives. We're going to keep the mechanical drive out, plug it all back in, screw it all back together, and whether or not Mara wants to clone the old NVMe drive, you know, I use a Silverstone, what is it called, an MS-16. It's a USB drive enclosure, but it's not really an enclosure. I have it over here. And what's great about it is that you don't have to use any tools or worry about a cover. Essentially, you, I mean, I guess you could use this as a permanent, but I wouldn't. This is really a tool for techs or people that do a lot of data recovery and things like that, where you take your old NVMe drive, like here, and you place it into the socket as you would any other.
No cloning or backup necessary.
No, we do a fresh install.
Fresh install.
And then we just push that down past the little rubber post that sticks up. We plug this into either USB-C or A. They give you both cables, I believe. And there's a little power on and power off so that you're not shocking the NVMe as you insert and remove it from USB. And then this will appear as the next drive letter available on your machine, and you can sift through the folders and copy off whatever you want. And then when you're done, just pull that little rubber post back, pull the drive out, and that way there's no lid or screws. You could lose the little rubber post, granted, but they do give you an extra one in the box. These run about 60 bucks. They're from Silverstone. It's very well made. And if your NVMe drive has a heatsink on it, it won't interfere, so that you can still pull the data off. Versus an enclosure would likely prevent you from putting the lid back on from an NVMe drive that has a built-in heatsink. So I really like this tool as a tech. We've already copied the data off of this. Once again, you can get these little SATA to USB cables for under $10 on Amazon that don't require any power. They run right off USB. Copy what you want off of it. And if you want, you can even take these old drives that are slow and relatively small in capacity and leave all the data on them and put them in a drawer or a safe as a backup. You could never have too many backups. And that one's already paid for. So why toss them aside or erase them when you can put them somewhere safe and secure? And after a few years, if the data is perishable and it doesn't matter anymore, well, at that point, then you can destroy it or erase it to donate or whatever. So with that, I think it'll wrap it up for us today. A long one today. What is that? 3 hours? 4 hours. Started at 1 o'clock. It's about 10 minutes to 5. But I really enjoy hanging out with you guys. I love our interactions. And even if it's me correcting common misconceptions, they're very common. And that's why I get a little frustrated sometimes. I'm like, are we still doing this? Are we still believing in ghosts? Aren't we adults? Don't we need evidence and proof before we believe things? I do. And when I hear somebody, you know, telling me about ghosts, show me a ghost. Show me one. I want to see it. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. Pretty simple rule. But the idea isn't to make anybody feel bad. It's to empower people with knowledge and confidence, so you don't have to worry about things you can't see. Because then you just can't. I don't know how you'd sleep at night. Let's see. Is normally used for a Hall sensor to tell that the lid is closed. Interesting. Typically, it's a Hall sensor. Oh, that's David Dix also saying the same thing. Interesting. Never heard of such a thing. Mortant says the Silverstone TS16. Yeah, I think I got the model incorrect. Silverstone TS16. Mortant is correct. That is the NVMe enclosure right here. Silverstone TS16. They're available at silverstone.com, Amazon, etc. Very well built, and I really like that tool a lot. And LRCX joins us. Welcome in to Larry, and thank you, Barry Klein. Thank you for all joining us today. I never did check the phone, did I? Let me just take a quick look here as I put my glasses away to see if I've missed any notifications that we can address while we're live. And then we'll wrap it up. It looks like we haven't missed any Amazon gift cards today, so then I don't have to worry about not saying thank you to somebody. See, I got a friend of mine reaching out there. And that looks like it. All right, well, nothing from you guys. Now, remember, if you do want to reach out to us, please use the channel email address. I'm going to put that up one more time here on the screen. Right over here. So comments, questions, concerns. If you have something you want to see repaired or built, maybe we can help you with it. We have to know the details and where you're located, and that's best handled privately in email versus an open forum. We certainly love to hear from you guys, and feel free to reach out anytime. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. I want to thank you all again for your participation. A shout out once more for those super chats that came in today from ERHA. I see Dale Mulake became a new member today. Right on. Thank you, Dale. Peter from the Netherlands with a €1 super chat earlier. And James Steiner became a new member today as well. Well, thank you, James. Welcome into the Tech Club. James Goodwin, thank you for your super chat. I missed Planet Cryos, but Planet Cryos had left a $5 super chat and said, please don't take this the wrong way, but take this dollars and do what you want with it. Thank you, Planet Cryos. Also, Planet Cryos renewed his membership, now a member for 32 months in a row. Of course, shout out and a thanks to our friend Buster out there in Scotland with his super chat and other contributions. Jose Lopez contributed $1 super chat. Thank you, Jose. Angela Perry and William Newman are brand new members. Welcome to our new members. Oh, and Alex Matucci are all new members. Wow, we got a lot of new members today. That is awesome. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. I'd much rather have you as individuals supporting us than manufacturers trying to sell you something. So thank you so much for allowing us the freedom to continue to make the content we want to make as often as we want to make it, and to say whatever we want to say, positive or negative, for the reasons that I have for saying it, not for the reasons somebody is telling me to say it. And it's because of your support I can do that. Speaking of support, a super shout out and thank you not only to Buster, as previously mentioned, but also Paul Gray, who joins us from Australia. It sent us 2 Amazon gift cards the last couple days that are not used yet, but they will be used as AMD announced 2 new X3D chips. I'm going to skip over that 9800 X3D. You guys can have it. $460? No thanks. But the 9850 and the 9900 X3D, they should be out in a couple weeks. And we're getting new motherboards, the new 800 series B rated boards for AMD and Intel. Those should be out next week, or actually within 3 days. And then we should have them hopefully within the next week or so we can be some of the first content creators to share that experience with you. It's just the latest generation of what we're already familiar with regards to the 700 series, 600 series, 500 series, only now with the latest AM5 and the latest Intel Ultra line of CPU sockets, right? They have a new chipset, both AMD and Intel do. They came out with the Z chipset already. That's the expensive one. We've not yet seen the mid-range ones. They're out in 3 days. So I'm excited. We should be getting a couple from Asus, one for Intel, one for AMD. And we'll put together, prep a motherboard and see what we're getting for the money. It might just be a better value for most of you than an over-the-top Z series board that, you know, if you're not planning on overclocking and you don't need all that many lanes of traffic in USB, you could save a lot of money for something you wouldn't use anyway, right? So, all right, that'll wrap it up for me for today. A shout out and a thank you again to our friends at Acronis and RoboForm that offer you guys those discounts. SCD keys if you're looking for Windows and Office keys. Again, if you have any issues with anything that we endorse here, feel free to, well, first of all, give the company a chance. Let them know. Give them a chance to correct it, please. Everybody makes mistakes. Barring that, if you're not satisfied, reach out to us personally, and we'll figure out a solution for you, guaranteed that you'll be happy with. That'll wrap it up for us for today. Thank you for watching, and again, thank you to Mara for, you know, keeping me in line and doing all of the work she does behind the scenes. You think I should, what? Should I put this together off camera? Or do you think I should save the reassembly?
Upgrade it.
Because the reassembly is exactly the opposite of how we took it apart. I don't know that there's...
We'll put the drives in.
That I can do it at 2 o'clock this morning and you guys don't have to, you know, not be able to see because the light is gone. And you can have your laptop back and everybody's happy. So from this point forward, just play the video in reverse and that's how it all goes back together. That's such a cop-out.
No, I think it was important to go through the detail that you did. There were a couple people that were looking for some. A couple of them had some holes in there. So this was great and usable. So we did do that. Putting in the drives, RAM, that's pretty cool. How to do that is already on channel on.
Everything is simple, but changing the battery on this
So
particular machine.
showed, I think, what is the most step to actually do. That's good.
All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for us. Long show, but hey, nice relaxed Sunday. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your friendship. We'll see you all again very, very soon. Until next time.
Bye for now. Hey, that's frog face.
That's frog face. All right, where's my titles? Hold on. Oh, I have the perfect end screen.
Now it's that.